Hey, the high school dropout, still rocking that pathetic style, huh? Well, let me treat you to some fine wine today. At the reunion, I bumped into a classmate who used to mock me for being poor back in school. Despite us both being grown adults now, the moment he spotted me, he unbelievably held his wine glass over my head and poured the wine all over me. The rich aroma clung to my entire body, leaving me feeling terrible. How about that? Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high life, high school dropout. This guy hasn't changed one bit since those days. I was beyond angry, filled with disappointment. I've made up my mind, decided about what I declared something ruthless to the classmate who mocked me. Then his eyes widened and his face turned pale rapidly. Well then, let's start my counterattack in full. My name is Kevin, raised in a typical family with a self-employed father and a stay-at-home mother. My childhood was free from significant hardships. After school, I tossed my backpack and play in the neighborhood park with friends until dusk. But things changed when I entered middle school. My father stopped coming home due to his work. It was normal for my dad to come home after I had gone to bed and leave early in the morning. I just assumed it was normal for him not to be around much. But on his rare days off, he did try to provide some family time, like going for drives nearby or taking us to amusement parks. And then it was just my mom and me. Mom, are you okay? One late night as I got up to use the bathroom, I saw her sighing repeatedly while looking at the household budget book. Yeah, I'm fine. You don't have to worry about anything, she said with a smile. But her face was visibly worn. Lately, there had been changes at the dinner table. The number of side dishes had decreased, and the fruits that used to be a staple were now gone. The lunches she packed for me each morning also changed, mostly just plain rice with a small amount of pickles or simmered dishes. One day, Brad caught sight of my meager lunch and started picking on me. Your dad ran off in the night, leaving your family behind, didn't he? I heard it from my dad. That's why you bring such lame lunches, right? It's hilarious, he said, laughing with his cronies. I was so angry I almost lashed out, but the image of my mom's smiling face came to mind and I clenched my fists to hold back. I don't want to cause trouble for Mom. Brad was the son of the president of Bradley Merchandising, a well-known food company in the area, and was seen by teachers as a model student due to his good behavior. In reality, however, he was a terrible guy who used his father's status and connections to bully others. If anyone stood up to him, they became his target. Fearing this, my classmates gradually distanced themselves from me, turning a blind eye to how I was treated. Encouraged by this, Brad's teasing only escalated, and finally, I reached my breaking point. It was lunchtime as usual. I sat in my usual spot, a secluded corner of the staircase, eating my lunch. Hey, who's Kevin? Brad yelled. Yo, Brad, I replied. Brad approached me with a sneering smile. I usually ignored him, but he didn't like that and took an unexpected action. Typical peasant's lunch looks as bad as ever, he said, reaching for my lunchbox. Hey, what are you doing? I impulsively knocked Brad's hand away. Ouch, you sorry, but he suddenly reached for it. Then Brad snatched my lunchbox and slammed it onto the floor. The rice and leftover meat and potatoes from last night scattered in a sad mess. I pictured my mother's sad face. What the heck are you doing? I shouted, grabbing Brad by the collar. Think you can hit me? You know what'll happen if you do, he said with a smug look, seeing his triumphant face. I lost all restraint. Before I knew it, I was on top of Brad, his handsome face red and swollen, his lips split. Both of us were breathing heavily. You'll pay for this, Brad's voice trembled. Hey, what are you two doing? A teacher from student discipline, alerted by the commotion, yelled fiercely and dragged us to the guidance office. I'm so sorry, my mother said, her face pale, bowing repeatedly. This is unacceptable, causing such a disturbance at school. The teacher with a characteristically shiny face and bulging eyes scolded us. No matter how many times I explained, the teacher wouldn't listen, instead fully believing Brad's fabricated story. Brad, as if nothing had happened, vilified me as a violent person. Being the son of a well-known local businessman, he was untouchably supported, facing no consequences. Faced with this blatant injustice, all I could do was endure. After the hellish guidance session, as my mother and I were leaving, the teacher spat out at me. I'm worried about what kind of adult you'll become, always resorting to violence. Can you even become a decent person? Just you watch. But our life became increasingly difficult. with my mom's part-time job not enough to make ends meet. Despite the violent incident with Brad, my mom believed in me to the end. Always kind, my mom was someone I didn't want to burden any further. So with a sole desire to ease her burden, I decided not to pursue college and instead chose to work. Decades have since passed, days whizzing by, seasons changing rapidly, and society evolving at a dizzying pace, brimming with new conveniences. Before I knew it, the familiar streets had transformed, and my bitter, dark adolescent years seemed to fade into the distance. It was around this time that I received an invitation to a middle school reunion. When I saw that letter, the image of Brad's sneering face came back to me. He would undoubtedly be there. Honestly, I wasn't keen on going, but we were all grown-ups now. Surely he wouldn't start anything petty. With that thought, I decided to attend. "Hey Kev, long time no see. You look good." Being called by my nickname by a classmate felt like I was back in middle school. While many had drifted apart after the violence, a few classmates who remained friends through it all were there, and he was one of them. "Man, you've aged a bit, haven't you?" he said, patting his protruding belly. "You too." As we shared updates and reminisced, a familiar voice rang out. "Hey, you're here too, huh? Wow, Brad, that's you." He seemed quite drunk and was in high spirits. "Brad, you okay?" I was surprised at myself for expressing concern. But Brad, glaring fiercely, retorted, "A bottom feeder like you worrying about me? I hadn't fallen that low." "Listen up." Holding a wine glass, he boasted, "I run Bradley Merchandising. It's wise to stay on my good side." He laughed arrogantly, then peering into my face, he exclaimed, "Hey, the high school dropout, still rocking that pathetic style, huh? Well, let me treat you to some fine wine today." And with that, Brad held his wine glass over my head and poured the wine all over me. The surrounding crowd went silent, staring at us in a scene of total chaos. The reunion was completely ruined. The rich aroma clung to my entire body, leaving me feeling terrible. How about that? Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high life, high school dropout. He hadn't changed a bit from the times he used his privileged position to cause trouble. I was beyond angry, filled with disappointment, all my secret hopes shattered. "Brad, have made up my mind, decided about what to do." To Brad's mocking face, I delivered a stark announcement. "You're fired." The room fell silent for a moment. "Fired? What's that supposed to mean? High school dropout? Can't even speak English?" Brad asked, clearly baffled. But I said seriously, "It means exactly what it sounds like." The crowd began to murmur. A former classmate tapped my shoulder and asked a question that seemed to float in everyone's mind. "So what do you do now?" "I currently work at a food company as renowned as Bradley Merchandising." Wiping my head and face with a handkerchief I took from my pocket, I started explaining. "I'm in charge of corporate acquisitions, and I'm actually working on acquiring your company as the next president. You should know this better than anyone." "What? What are you talking about?" Brad, trying to act tough, had his lips twitching and sweat on his forehead. "President Johnson should have officially contacted you about this, right?" "Johnson? President?" Brad's face turned completely pale. "Yes, I work for Johnson Merchandising, a company my father is the president of. After high school, I joined this company and now serve as an executive director, overseeing the entire company. Deciding not to pursue college and instead work was tough, as there were hardly any companies willing to hire someone with only a high school education. I couldn't afford to be choosy anymore. I applied for any job I could find and ended up working part-time at a logistics warehouse. However, the barrier due to my lack of education was thicker than I imagined. Once people learned about my educational background, their attitudes changed, and I was never considered for permanent employment. Would my life end just as a factory Tim, lost in despair? I was returning home from work one day. When I encountered the unexpected, I arrived home to find my father, whom I never thought I'd see again. He looked much older, with white hair mixed in. Despite his weak smile, the sight of him brought a surge of anger, thinking of all the hardships we endured. "You just waltz back now. You have no idea how much we suffered." Then my father tearfully apologized. "I'm sorry, honey Kevin. I'm truly sorry. I was so focused on getting the company on track that I neglected you. No excuse can change the fact that I caused you unnecessary hardship. I'm deeply sorry." My mother and I, without a word, just stared at him. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I want to at least apologize to you both in some way, he said. The house was completely silent. Eventually, my mother spoke up. Regardless, I'm thankful you've come back. Things might not go back to how they were, but I do want to try and rebuild our family little by little. But there's a condition. What is it? My father asked. Give this boy a full-time job at your company, my mother said, surprising me. Kevin has been working hard since he decided not to go to high school. He should be enjoying his youth like others his age, but due to his educational background, he struggled to find a full-time position. My mother's face was serious, almost frighteningly so. How much time had passed? I wondered. All right, my father said. Kevin can work at our company, but on one condition. He must take the GED. Understand? There was a sense of earnestness in my father's voice, his concern for my future evident, considering the circumstances. Having to give up high school to work, I stepped up from a factory temp to an employee at a renowned company. Of course, it wasn't easy at first. In fact, it was a continuous struggle. Being the president's son made me a target of envy, and I was often harshly criticized for even minor mistakes. Being new to corporate life, I struggled with understanding business etiquette and social norms. Sweating through every new challenge, my colleagues would just scoff, offering no help. I felt completely isolated at work. Despite this, I worked tirelessly, volunteering for menial tasks and responding earnestly to unreasonable demands from superiors. Seeing documents I worked hard on being thrown into the trash with a smirk, or finding my desk littered with trash, I often thought about quitting. It was disheartening to be judged through the lens of being the president's son. Despite all my efforts, what kept me going was my mother's presence. The mixed emotions she must have swallowed when she asked for me to be hired at my father's company must have been excruciating. For her sake, I had to meet the company's expectations. As I continued to work relentlessly, gradually, people began to recognize my efforts. Slowly, I was accepted as a team member, and this began to reflect in my work results. It possibly provided a healthy stimulus for other employees as the company's sales started to rise year by year. As a result of my hard work, I was recognized and promoted. From this year, I became an executive director entrusted with important tasks. I have been involved in negotiations for the acquisition of Bradley Merchandising, a company that had been on a downward spiral for several years. Kev, you've made an incredible rise through the ranks. Never thought we'd have an executive director among our classmates. It's going to be awkward just casually inviting you out now. My unexpected identity caused a stir among the crowd. But Brad, still in disbelief, insisted, "Stop lying. I don't accept such a tall tale." Well, it seems your dad, the president, didn't share much about the company's situation with you. It's not surprising you didn't know. But my father was going to make me president. About that, I said, my expression serious. My father instructed me to overhaul the entire management of Bradley Merchandising, from the president down. That's impossible. Brad's face froze. But I didn't have enough evidence to make such a drastic decision. Then I heard about the reunion and remembered. You were supposed to be the next president. I thought it wouldn't be too late to meet and talk here, but as I let out a breath, releasing the disappointment welling up inside, Brad, you hadn't changed at all. Still belittling and blaming others, still full of baseless confidence. That doesn't mean you can fire me. Come on, help me out. We're classmates, right? His attitude had changed drastically from his earlier arrogance, now desperately pleading. But I wasn't going to soften my stance over something like this. I just made a logical decision as a business leader. Running a company isn't as easy as you think, I said firmly, grabbing Brad's shoulders and looking him in the eye. I faced many challenges as the president's son, but I never gave up because this company was my only path. You had more advantages, attending a good high school and graduating from college. It's time you put in real effort for once in your life. Tears held back, my voice shaking as I spoke to Brad, but he just stared back in silence, not uttering a word. A month after the reunion, I stood in front of the Bradley Merchandising building with my father. Today, we'll officially proceed with the acquisition. I had confided in my father the day before, and after some reluctance, he agreed to my terms. We've been waiting for you, said the president of Bradley Merchandising, greeting us as he entered the meeting room, followed by his son, Brad. Bradley spoke of his intentions to have Brad succeed him as president. Now, about the acquisition, he prompted me to start the discussion. But Brad's behavior was appalling, far from what one would expect from a future president or even a professional. I raised my voice. "Hey, Brad, are you even listening? This is about the future of the company. You even realize the responsibilities of a president?" "I don't need to hear that from you," Brad retorted. Then he turned to his father, saying something outrageous. "Dad, are you sure it's okay to trust our company to someone who just climbed up using his parents' influence?" Brad's suggestion that he was more capable of making beneficial decisions for the company seemed almost delusional. My father, witnessing this, clearly showed a look of exasperation. Even the usually stern face of Bradley grew more severe. "Fool. What do you know about our company?" he said, his temples throbbing with anger. Brad could only stare back with an expression I had never seen before. Bradley continued, unabated by his anger. "Kevin's right. Your attitude today is beyond disrespectful. Running a company is not a game. If you're not serious, then leave." Brad's voice was pitifully weak in response to his father's overwhelming presence. The president then stood up, facing us with a serious expression. "I apologize for this disgraceful display. I've been too indulgent with my son, expecting him to become more responsible in the workforce. But I was mistaken. I never imagined he would behave so foolishly, especially in such a setting. To you, the executive director of Johnson Merchandising, and you, Kevin, I apologize for his many discordances. As a parent, I am truly sorry." My father then addressed Bradley. "Your feelings are clear, Bradley." The once imposing figure of the food company's president seemed utterly diminished. Bradley, with a desperate look, continued, "President Kevin, we need your help to save Bradley Merchandising. We no longer have the strength to continue on our own. If we come under your company's wing, I will step down from all my management roles, and the same goes for the entire board. But please keep our employees, our precious staff, without letting anyone go." With that, he bowed so deeply his forehead nearly touched the table. I looked at my father, who seemed deep in thought, his eyes closed. "Dad," I murmured quietly. He nodded solemnly. "Bradley," I began, "yes, I see how much you care about your company. Given that, let's give you another chance to turn things around." Brad and his father looked shocked. "Yes, a chance. If you genuinely care about your employees, there's still something to be done. We'll support you as much as we can. If that fails, we have no choice but to take over completely." "Kevin, how can I ever thank you?" Beside his tearful father, Brad looked completely drained, as if all the strength had left his body. I continued speaking, lancing between the two. "I've always resented my father," I began, causing a look of shock in Brad. "He neglected our family under the guise of work, forcing me to give up high school. I aimed to prove him wrong. But my mother, who suffered the most, forgave him. I still vividly remember my mother's resolute face when she chose to forgive. At first, I couldn't understand her. But now I get why she decided to forgive. She taught me the importance of it." I heard my father murmur softly. Kevin said, "I am who I am today because my mother forgave my father, and recently, I finally felt like I can forgive him too." Bradley nodded in agreement, feeling as if pushed forward by an invisible force. I continued my thoughts. "Everyone deserves a second chance. People become stronger by overcoming adversity," I said, turning to Brad, who was slouched back in his chair with a sulky demeanor. "Brad, it starts here. Isn't this your time to step up?" "But I don't know anything about running a company," Brad muttered. I placed my hand on his shoulder. "It's okay to start now. Work hard, and the results will follow, Brad," I reassured him. Brad looked at me, a faint smile on his face. For the first time after countless discussions, Bradley Merchandising agreed to a business partnership with Johnson Merchandising and began the path to recovery. Brad became the new president with his father as an advisor. Shedding the pride of being the son of Bradley Merchandising, Brad worked tirelessly to regain the trust of each business partner through humble visits. His transformation inspired the employees, and their mindset began to shift. The company, once complacent under the guise of a large corporation and marred by internal power struggles, saw employees stand up to the challenge. Sales put more effort into their work, and the administration focused on creating a welcoming environment for business partners. Brad notably enhanced working conditions by revising inclusive welfare policies and eliminating exclusive systems. contributing to a significant turnaround for the formerly struggling Bradley merchandising. Encouraged by the changes in everyone, including Brad, the company's sales gradually climbed like ascending stairs. This year, we were even able to provide bonuses to all employees, albeit modest ones. Similarly, our company's performance improved significantly, and we've now reached a point where we can sponsor various advertising campaigns. The reunion became a catalyst for rekindling friendships with classmates, I reflected. Initially wary of Brad, they were now impressed by his transformation, sharing jokes and laughter. "Hey, can we drop the president title when we're off work?" I teased. "It's just a habit," Brad said, scratching his head in embarrassment. "Then at least call me by my old nickname when we're not working." I forgot what it was. "You used to call me that all the time." "Can't believe you remember that," Brad said, feigning exasperation. "All right, how about this? From now on, every time you call me president, you owe me a drink," I proposed with a smile. "That's a good idea." "Okay, Kev," Brad agreed, stopping in his tracks and calling me by the nostalgic nickname. "Thanks, Kev." Human nature tends to cling to negative emotions, and I've been no exception. I resented being looked down upon for being a high school dropout and felt bitter about my social standing. If I hadn't forgiven my father, I might not have reached out to Brad and others. Despite all the harassment from Brad, I couldn't give up on him. Remembering my own struggles, I realized that people who overcome hardships can face any challenge ahead. If you strongly desire to start over, you can change from that point. I plan to lead the company humbly, navigating the challenges of business with dedication alongside my valuable friends and colleagues.
My life's pretty straightforward. I'm all about fitness, health, and now, apparently, drama. I'm 26, juggling my job as a fitness trainer and my health blog. That's how I bumped into Mark at the sports center, a connection that quickly turned into something special. He's got this vibe that's hard to ignore, and before we knew it, we were deep in what you'd call a whirlwind romance. Now, let me set the scene for you. It was a hot summer day, and I was meeting Mark's family for the first time. I was nervous but excited. Dressed in a simple, knee-length dress with short sleeves, nothing flashy, but apparently enough to kick off a storm. Mark had prepped me about his family, loving, a bit traditional, and protective of each other. He mentioned his mom, Linda, with a tone that I couldn't quite figure out at the time. "She's got strong opinions, but don't take it to heart," he said. Little did I know, those were words of warning. We walked into their family home, and there they were. Alex, Mark's younger brother, was the first to greet us, a hearty guy with a welcoming smile. Then came Linda. The air felt like it dropped a few degrees. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, lingering on my arms. Yes, my arms. Bare because it was summer and it was sweltering outside. "Is this how you dress to meet your future mother-in-law? A bit bold, don't you think?" Linda's voice was colder than I expected, laced with a disapproval that felt like a slap. I was taken aback, my mind racing for the right words. Mark squeezed my hand, a silent form of support. I cleared my throat. "Well, it's summer, you know? It's quite hot outside, and I thought this was pretty decent and comfortable." Linda scoffed. "Comfortable or not, it's about first impressions." I would have expected something more appropriate. Mark jumped in, trying to smooth things over. "Mom, come on, it's really hot today. Eric is dressed fine. Let's not start off on the wrong foot." But Linda wasn't having any of it. "I'm just saying, Mark. It's about respect." "But fine, let's have dinner." Dinner was a tense affair. Conversations flowed around me, but Linda's earlier comments hung over the table like a dark cloud. Alex tried to lighten the mood, cracking jokes and sharing stories, which I was thankful for. Mark kept shooting me reassuring looks, but the damage was done. After dinner, while helping with the dishes, Linda cornered me in the kitchen. "Listen, dear, I'm just looking out for my son. He's a good boy, and I don't want him to make a mistake." I was floored. "A mistake? Linda, I love Mark, and I'm not here to play games. I don't know what I did to give you a bad impression, but that's not me." She just shook her head. we'll see. Time tells all truths. The ride home was quiet. Mark apologized for his mom's behavior, but I could tell he was upset too. She can be protective, but this was too much. I'm sorry, Erica. I sighed, leaning back in the seat. It's okay, Mark. But if this is how it's going to be, we've got a rocky road ahead. The wedding planning was in full swing, and Mark and I were all in, picking out decorations, tasting cakes, and of course, finding the perfect attire. I fell in love with this stunning dress, sleek and a tad revealing, but nothing outrageous. Well, at least I thought so until Linda caught a glimpse. You plan on wearing that in front of the whole family, Erica? She blurted out the first time she saw it. Looks like you're aiming for a beach party rather than a wedding. I tried to laugh it off. It's just modern, Linda. Plus, it's going to be a warm day, and I want to feel comfortable. Mark squeezed my hand, signaling not to start a battle we couldn't win. But Linda's frown said it all. She wasn't pleased, muttering about tradition and decency as she walked off. I thought, if a dress could stir the pot, what lay ahead? After the initial clash with Linda, things settled into a tense kind of normalcy. I threw myself into work and my blog, which was my slice of sanity. My blog and social media were my territory, a place where I felt in control and could share my passion for fitness and health. It never crossed my mind that this very passion would stir the pot once again. One evening, Mark and I were lounging on the couch, a rare moment of downtime. He was scrolling through his phone, a frown slowly forming on his face. "Babe, we need to talk," he said, his tone serious. I sat up. "What's up? Something wrong?" He handed me his phone, showing my Instagram profile. There, in the comments of my latest post, were a bunch of supportive and some flirty comments. Normal stuff, I thought. Okay, and? I was confused. "It's my mom," Mark sighed. "She's been going through your posts, making a big deal out of every single guy comment. She's spinning it like you're, I don't know, inviting attention?" I felt a rush of anger. You've got to be kidding me. It's Instagram, for crying out loud. People comment. That's how it works. Yeah, I know, but she's convinced there's more to it. She's telling everyone who'll listen that you're not faithful. It's ridiculous. I grabbed the phone from him, scrolling through the comments. Nothing out of the ordinary. Yet, Linda had managed to twist it into something sordid. So, what? Am I supposed to police who comments on my posts now? No, of course not. But maybe we could limit who can comment or something. Just until this blows over? Mark's suggestion was well-meaning, but infuriating. I snapped. So I have to censor my account because your mom has a twisted view of me? Hell no. That's not happening. Fast forward through the Instagram saga, with Linda twisting my every move into a scandal, things only got stickier. Alex, bless him, started giving me rides home from work since his office was just a block away from the gym. It was innocent convenience, but not to Linda's eyes. At a family dinner one evening, with the tension thick in the air, Linda started her usual insinuations. "Nice of Alex to play chauffeur, isn't it?" she said, her voice dripping with implication. "Seems like he's always there when Mark isn't." Mark's jaw tensed, and I saw Alex stiffen. "Mom, what are you implying?" Mark's voice had that warning edge, but Linda was on a roll. "Oh, nothing. Just making conversation," she replied, feigning innocence while her eyes darted between me and Alex. It was like a match to the fuse. "Stop it, Mom. You're out of line," Alex snapped, clearly at his limit. The argument escalated from there, with Mark caught in the middle, torn between his brother and his mother's accusations. The drive home was silent, the weight of the accusations hanging between us. I couldn't believe Linda would stoop so low, using Alex's kindness as a weapon against me. The whole mess with Linda reached a boiling point I never thought possible. After the latest stunt she pulled, accusing me of messing around because Alex gave me a few rides home, I hit my limit. I told Mark flat out, your mom's not welcome in our house anymore. I can't do it. She's crossed too many lines. You'd think I'd declared war. Linda went ballistic when she heard about the ban. But honestly, I was past caring. Her constant digs and accusations were bad enough, but what came next was the real kicker. A couple of months down the line, I found out I was pregnant. Joy turned to chaos real quick. Linda, upon hearing the news, decided to spin a new tale, telling Mark she could be carrying anyone's child. How do you know it's yours? With all those men at her gym, who knows? Hearing that venom from his own mom, Mark started to change. He'd listen, really listen, to her poison. I could see it in his eyes, the doubt. It was like a slap in the face. Our once solid bond was now filled with this unspoken tension, eating away at us. One night, after overhearing another one of their phone calls, I confronted Mark. So, what? You think I'm cheating on you? That this baby isn't yours? My voice was sharp, a mix of hurt and anger. Mark looked torn, a shadow of himself. I don't know what to think anymore, Erica. My mom, she's got all these ideas, and what? You're gonna take her word over mine? Over everything we've built? I cut him off, disbelief coloring every word. He didn't answer. Just shuffled his feet and looked anywhere but at me. That silence spoke volumes, more than any argument ever could. Things between us got colder after that. Conversations were clipped, filled with tension. It was like living with a stranger. The joy of our upcoming baby was overshadowed by this cloud of suspicion and doubt. When our baby boy came into the world with his fair hair and bright blue eyes, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would start to look up. But I couldn't have been more wrong. As he grew, his features became even more pronounced, making him the spitting image of a golden-haired angel. Problem was, Mark, my husband, is as brunette and dark-eyed as they come, which, of course, gave Linda, the ever-suspicious mother-in-law, more ammo for her accusations. I even dug up my old childhood photos to show Linda and Mark, hoping it would shut down the whole ridiculous argument. Look, I said, pointing to a picture of me at 5, blonde and blue-eyed, just like our son. It's genetics, Linda. Can't you see the resemblance? Linda just sniffed, unimpressed, her eyes narrowing. Convenient, isn't it? That your genes decided to pop up now. And Alex being blonde doesn't help your case. Mark stood there, caught in the middle, his face a mix of confusion and hurt. The tension was unbearable. Things hit the fan at our son's first birthday party. With all the guests cooing over the baby, Linda couldn't resist making a scene. This child looks nothing like my son. Everyone can see it. We need a DNA test to prove who the father really is, she announced out loud, making everyone uncomfortable. I was livid, my face burning with embarrassment and anger. Are you out of your mind, Linda? Accusing me in front of everyone? No way am I doing some test just because your paranoia's got the better of you. I shot back, my voice dripping with indignation. It was humiliating, being accused like that, especially in front of friends and family. But then, Mark stepped in, and not in the way I hoped. Actually, we're doing it, he said, his voice cold, a hardness in his eyes I hadn't seen before. If you've got nothing to hide, then there's no issue. We do the test, or we're done. I can't be married to someone I don't trust. I was floored. You serious right now? You're choosing your mom's crazy over me, over your son? He didn't budge, didn't even seem to flinch at my words. It's not just my mom. There's too much doubt, too much talk. The test ends it one way or another. And until then? I asked, my heart in my throat, already dreading the answer. Pack your bags. Stay somewhere else. I can't look at you, not now, not with these doubts. His words cut through me, leaving a chill in their wake. So, there I was, packing up a storm, my hands shaking with a cocktail of rage and hurt. Our baby boy, oblivious to it all, watched with wide, innocent eyes as his world, and mine, crumbled. I left, heading to the only place I could think of, my mom's. My mom was waiting, arms wide open, when I got there. I barely got through the door before I broke down. "He's kicked us out, Mom. Over some DNA test Linda's convinced him we need." My mom was all fury, ready to storm over there and give Mark a piece of her mind. "Over my dead body," she said, but I stopped her. "No, it's not worth it. Not right now." I spent the night going over every moment, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. How did we get here, from being so in love to questioning our baby's paternity? And Alex, caught up in this mess for no good reason other than Linda's spite. After the whole mess at my son's first birthday, word got around fast. It felt like the whole city knew about Linda's accusations before the party favors were even picked up. My friends, my mom's friends, even the neighbors who'd watched me grow up, were all whispering behind my back. It was like living in a bad dream. Fed up and desperate to clear my name, I decided to go ahead with the DNA test. Picking up the phone, I called Mark, my voice steady, but my hands shaking. "I'll do the test," I said, cutting straight to the chase. There was a pause on the other end before Mark replied, his voice too calm for my liking. "I knew you'd come around. It's for the best." Arriving at the clinic, I was a bundle of nerves. Mark was there, looking like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. And, to my surprise, so was Alex. "Why is he here?" I asked, nodding toward Alex, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. Mark didn't meet my eyes as he answered. "There's been talk that you and Alex might have, you know. He's getting tested too." I felt my blood boil at the implication. "You think I'd, with your brother? That's how little you trust me?" Before Mark could reply, the specialist called us in, breaking the tension for a moment. Inside, the specialist laid it out straight. Determining paternity can be complicated when potential fathers are siblings. We'll need additional samples from everyone involved, including from you, Erica, to ensure accuracy. So, we all gave our samples, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I could tell Alex was mortified, Mark was conflicted, and me? I was just angry. Angry that it had come to this, angry at Linda, angry at Mark for letting his mother's paranoia get this far. With the tests done, we were told it'd be a couple of weeks before we got the results. Those weeks were the longest of my life. I wasn't just sitting around, though. I made a few calls, talked to a man who promised he could help me out in a delicate matter. I didn't know if it would lead anywhere, but I had to try something. The waiting was torture, not knowing what the future held for me, my son, and even Mark and Alex. But I clung to the hope that once the results were in, I could start to put this whole nightmare behind me. The tension in Linda's living room was almost a physical presence, wrapping its icy fingers around my heart as we waited. The grand reveal was about to happen, with everyone playing their part in this twisted family drama. My son clutched my hand, sensing the storm brewing but not understanding its cause. Linda, ever the master of ceremonies in her own mind, dramatically sliced open the envelope containing the DNA test results. Her anticipation was palpable, hoping, no doubt, for a scandal to validate her accusations. But the moment she peeked inside, her expression faltered, her disappointment clear as day. "The father is Mark," she announced, her voice losing its usual sharpness. Mark, who had been a bundle of nerves, visibly relaxed, a smug smile spreading across his face. He turned to me, his arrogance returning full force. "Well, there you have it. No harm done, right? You can come back home now." His words ignited something fierce within me, a mix of disbelief and anger. I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "Come back? After all this? You must be joking." He blinked, taken aback by my reaction. "But, you're innocent, Erica. Isn't that what you wanted?" That's when I played my hand, pulling out the divorce papers I'd kept hidden away. The silence that followed was deafening as I laid them on the table. Mark's face went from confident to pale, a look of sheer panic taking over. "What's this?" Why? Divorce papers, I replied, the words tasting like freedom. And here's why. I then produced the photos, the undeniable proof of Mark's infidelity, captured in vivid detail by the private detective I'd secretly hired. Mark's transformation was pitiful. From confident to broken, he started to babble apologies, his earlier facade crumbling. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Please, let's talk about this. Talk? I scoffed, my voice cold. You dragged my name through the mud, let your mother accuse me of the worst, and all the while, you were the one cheating. There's nothing to talk about. Linda attempted to intervene, her earlier eagerness for drama now replaced by a desperate need to salvage the situation. Now, dear, let's all calm down. We can fix this. Fix this? I cut her off sharply. Your son's a cheat. And you're no better for stirring all this trouble based on lies. After I laid out the proof of Mark's betrayal for all to see, the room turned into a battleground of broken bonds and shattered illusions. Linda, with a look of sheer disgust, couldn't tear her eyes away from the photos spread out like a hand of betrayal on the coffee table. I'm not just walking away, Mark. I'll be demanding alimony and compensation for this treachery, I declared, my voice steady but seething with anger. Mark's face drained of color, his earlier bravado evaporating into thin air. You can't be serious, he stammered, looking from the photos to his mother, seeking some sort of refuge or rescue. Linda, ever the matriarch, tried to salvage what little control she thought she had. Oh, please. She was never right for you. She would have cheated on you sooner or later. You're better off without her. That's when Alex, who'd been quietly simmering with rage, stepped in. Enough, he exploded, his voice echoing off the walls. I'm done with all of this. With both of you. He looked pointedly at his mother and brother. After everything you put her through, based on nothing but your own twisted suspicions, I'm out. Linda turned to him, her face a mask of shock and desperation. Alex, please, don't say that. I was just trying to protect our family. Protect? Alex scoffed, his scorn palpable. Is that what you call this? Destroying relationships, spreading lies? I can't be part of this family if this is what it stands for. I'm moving to another city. Starting fresh, away from all this madness. Hearing of Alex's decision later, I relayed the events to my mom. She had always been my rock, and even now, her words provided a cold comfort. That's the price of Linda's folly. Her arrogance and stupidity cost her her own sons. Maybe now she'll see the harm she's caused. The fallout was immediate and absolute. Alex followed through on his promise, moving away and cutting ties. Mark was left to deal with the consequences of his actions, his mother's manipulations laying the foundation for a chasm too wide to bridge between them. Life after the dust settled was different. Not easier, but clearer, like I was seeing everything for the first time again. My mom and I had many long talks about it all, sitting on her old, comfy sofa with cups of tea that always seemed to go cold before we finished them. Mom, I started one evening, the sky outside painting a picture of calm I didn't quite feel inside. Do you think I made the right choice? With everything, the divorce, standing up to Linda and Mark like that? My mom set her cup down, turning to look at me with those wise eyes that had seen more of life than I ever wished to. Darling, you did what you had to do. You stood up for yourself, for your dignity. That's more important than staying in a marriage that was built on distrust. The biggest change, besides the obvious, was in Alex. He'd moved to another city, cutting ties with his family. He called me once, just before he left. I can't stay here, not after everything. I need to start fresh, somewhere where every corner doesn't remind me of all this. I understood. You'll always have a friend in me, Alex. You were the only one who really saw me through all this mess. He chuckled, a sound that held a shadow of our shared troubles. And you, me. Take care of yourself, all right? After hanging up, I couldn't help but feel a pang of loss. Not just for the relationship I thought I had with Mark, but for the family I thought I was part of. Months passed, and life found a new rhythm. My blog started picking up more traction, becoming a space where I could share not just tips on fitness and health, but also personal stories of resilience and starting over. It resonated with people, more than I expected. As I was settling into this new chapter of my life, finding solace in the routine I'd built for me and my boy, my phone rang out of the blue one afternoon. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen in a while, Linda. My initial instinct was to ignore it, let it go to voicemail, but something, maybe curiosity or maybe just a desire to finally put it all to bed, made me answer. Hello? Her voice came through, shaky and laced with something that sounded like regret. Erica, I was wondering, could I see him? My grandson? The audacity of her request after everything that had happened stopped me cold. For a moment, I was back in that living room, feeling the weight of her accusations all over again. You've got some nerve, Linda, I said, my voice steady but firm. After all the hell you put us through, now you want to play grandma? You didn't even want to see him before. She started to cry, mumbling apologies between sobs, trying to explain herself, but I wasn't having any of it. Save your tears, Linda. It's too late for sorries now. But please, I just want to make things right, she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. I sighed, a deep, weary sigh. You should have thought of that before. You made your bed. Now, you get to lie in it. Alone. Without waiting for her response, I hung up, the finality of the click echoing through me. It was harsh, maybe, but necessary. A line had been drawn, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was the one in control of where it went. Looking at my son, now a little older and wiser beyond his years, I knew we were going to be okay. We had each other, and a future that was ours to shape. The day I turned 4 was the day I became invisible. Not in a cool, superhero kind of way, but in a my parents literally forget I exist kind of way. That's because my brother, Michael, came into the world, and suddenly, I might as well have been a piece of furniture for all the attention I got. My dad, Joe, was the kind of guy who had his heart set on passing his car repair shops down to a son. So, when Michael was born, it was like he won the lottery. Mom, Sarah, just went along with whatever made Dad happy. It was always about the heir and the legacy with him. Me? I was just Anna, the first attempt that didn't quite hit the mark. Joe, can you believe it? We have a son now. Mom's voice would echo through the house like she was announcing the arrival of royalty. Yeah, Sarah, the heir. Finally, Dad would respond, his voice booming with a mix of pride and relief, as if he'd been holding his breath waiting for a son and could finally breathe easy. I remember standing there, clutching my doll, feeling my heart sink. Didn't I count for something too? Thankfully, my grandparents, Frank and Mary, lived just down the street. They were my safe haven. Grandma Mary would always greet me with warm hugs and freshly baked cookies, making me feel like the most special girl in the world. Anna, come here, love. Tell me about your day, she'd say, her eyes twinkling with genuine interest. Grandpa Frank, with his endless stories and hearty laughs, made me feel like adventure was just around the corner. And then there was Aunt Lily, Dad's sister, who never had kids of her own but treated me like I was hers. Who needs em anyway? Aunt Lily would say about my parents, her voice rough from years of smoking. You got us, kid. We're your real family. Aunt Lily was the cool aunt. She'd take me on walks, tell me stories about the good old days, and teach me how to stand up for myself. If anyone gives you trouble, you come to me, she'd say, her tone serious, but her eyes soft. We don't take crap from anyone, got it? Got it, I'd reply, feeling a mix of comfort and confidence wash over me. Life went on like this for a while. At home, I was the ghost girl, tiptoeing around a brother who was showered with all the love and attention a kid could want. At my grandparents' house, I was Anna, the cherished granddaughter, the beloved niece. One evening, after another day of being overlooked, I went to my grandparents' house, seeking the warmth and affection I craved. The contrast between their home and mine was like night and day. "Your dad's too caught up in his dreams of legacy," Grandpa Frank said, shaking his head. "Doesn't realize the treasure he's got in you." "He's a fool, Anna," Aunt Lily chimed in, her voice hard. "But we've got your back, always." It was in these moments, surrounded by my grandparents and aunt, that I felt whole. They saw me for who I was, not as a disappointment or a shadow, but as Anna, a girl with her own dreams and worth. But no matter how much love they gave me, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being the forgotten daughter at home. It was a title I didn't want but seemed stuck with, a reminder that in my parents' eyes, I was just the prologue to my brother's story. My 10th birthday was a big deal, at least to me. In our little world, hitting double digits meant you were no longer a little kid. Grandma and Grandpa knew this and decided to surprise me with something I'd been dreaming of, my very own phone. Not just any phone, but a shiny, new one that I could use to call them or Aunt Lily anytime I felt invisible at home. "Happy birthday, Anna. Look what we got for you." Grandma beamed, her eyes shining with excitement as she handed me the small, wrapped box. I tore off the wrapping paper, my heart racing. The moment I saw the phone, my world lit up. "Oh my gosh, thank you. This is the best gift ever." I couldn't contain my excitement, hugging them both tightly. Aunt Lily winked at me. "Now you can call me whenever you want, kiddo. No more feeling left out, yeah?" "Yeah," I grinned, feeling a sense of independence bubble up inside me. But my joy was short-lived. The very next day, Dad saw the phone in my hand. His face turned into a scowl, the kind that made my stomach twist into knots. "What's that?" he barked, nodding toward the phone. "It's my birthday gift from Grandma and Grandpa," I said, my voice small, already sensing trouble. Dad snatched the phone from my hands. "You don't need this. Michael will get more use out of it." "But Dad," I protested, my heart sinking. "It was my gift." "Enough," he snapped, turning away. "Michael, come here. Look what you've got now." I watched, devastated, as my little brother took the phone with a confused yet excited look. He didn't understand the gravity of the situation, but I did. It was another loud, clear message: Michael mattered more. Later, I cried to Aunt Lily over what happened. She was furious, her usual cool demeanor replaced with fiery anger. "That's bullshit." Aunt Lily rarely cursed, but when she did, it was serious. "They had no right to do that to you. It's your gift, your phone." Grandma and Grandpa were more diplomatic, but equally upset. "We'll talk to Joe," Grandpa said, his jaw set in a way that told me he meant business. The confrontation that ensued was something out of a primetime drama. Grandma and Grandpa, with Aunt Lily in tow, stormed over to our house. I tagged along, a mix of nervous and eager to see justice done. "Joe, you will give Anna her phone back this instant. It was a gift from us to her, not to Michael," Grandma stated, her voice steady but filled with a rare edge of authority. Dad looked taken aback, not used to being challenged, especially in his own home. "It's just a phone. Michael can." "It's not about the damn phone, Joe." Aunt Lily cut in, her voice rising. "It's about respecting your daughter's feelings. About showing her she matters too." There was a tense silence. Mom stood by, wringing her hands, a silent spectator as always. Finally, Dad relented, muttering under his breath as he fetched the phone and handed it back to me. "Fine. But don't expect any more gifts like this," he grumbled. "Thank you," I whispered, clutching the phone like a lifeline. As we walked back to Grandma and Grandpa's house, Aunt Lily put an arm around my shoulders. "Remember, Anna, you're worth more than how they treat you. Don't you forget that." Grandma squeezed my hand. "We'll always be here for you, my dear. Always." The year I turned 11, my world came crashing down. It wasn't just a bad day or a temporary setback, it was the kind of loss that changes everything. My grandparents, the two people who had been my rock, my sanctuary, were gone. Killed in a train accident, just like that. No goodbyes, no last hugs, nothing. Just a gaping hole where their love and warmth used to be. I remember coming home from school that day. The house was unusually quiet, but there was this tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Mom and Dad were in the living room, and Aunt Lily was there too, tears streaming down her face. I'd never seen her cry before. She was always the strong one, the unbreakable one. Seeing her like that scared me more than anything. "What's going on?" My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. Dad looked up, his face hard, no trace of the usual indifference. "Your grandparents were in a train accident. They didn't make it." The words hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My legs gave way, and I sank to the floor, the world spinning around me. Aunt Lily rushed over, pulling me into her arms. "It's going to be okay, Anna. We'll get through this together," she whispered, but her voice cracked, betraying her own despair. But things went from bad to worse. The funeral was a blur, a procession of faces, some familiar, most not, all offering the same empty condolences. "I'm sorry for your loss. They were wonderful people." Words meant to comfort, but they felt like ash in my mouth. After the funeral, the real bomb dropped. Dad announced that he was selling Grandma and Grandpa's house. The house where I'd spent the best parts of my childhood, where I felt loved and wanted. Aunt Lily was livid. "You can't do that, Joe. That house is supposed to be for Anna." Dad snorted, a sound full of contempt. "The will's a mess, Lily. And I'm next of kin. The house is mine to sell. And sell it I will. But where will I go? You're kicking me out on the street?" Aunt Lily's voice was high, panicked. She'd lived with my grandparents since forever. That house was her home too. "You should have thought about that before. Not my problem," Dad shot back, his tone cold and final. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could he be so cruel? Didn't he care at all? Aunt Lily gathered her dignity around her like a cloak, wiping away her tears. "Fine. I'll leave. But know this, Joe, you're losing the only family you've got left. Hope it's worth it." Dad nodded, and that was that. Aunt Lily had to pack up her life and leave the only home she'd known. I remember hugging her tight, not wanting to let go. She hugged me back, whispering, "It'll be okay, kiddo. We'll figure something out." Aunt Lily moved into this tiny apartment not too far from our place. It wasn't much, but it was hers. So, I started sneaking out to see Aunt Lily. It felt like a mini rebellion, but I needed to be with someone who understood, someone who felt the loss as much as I did. "Hey, Aunt Lily," I'd say, stepping into her cramped living room that somehow felt more like home than my actual house. "Anna, what are you doing here? Your dad will have my head if he finds out you're visiting." She'd half scold, half laugh, pulling me into a hug. "I don't care. I needed to see you," I'd reply, feeling the tension drain out of me. We'd sit and talk for hours. She'd tell me stories about Grandma and Grandpa, keeping their memory alive. Sometimes we'd just sit in silence, each lost in our thoughts, but it was a comfortable silence, filled with love and shared grief. After Grandma and Grandpa passed away, my life took a nosedive into something I barely recognized. Home wasn't home anymore, it felt more like I was some kind of servant. I did everything, scrubbed floors, cooked meals that no one thanked me for, and tried to keep the house in order. It was exhausting, and all the while, I felt this heavy ache for the family I lost, the warmth that used to greet me every day after school. Then came that Friday that felt like the final straw. School had been rough, and all I wanted was to dump my backpack and collapse onto my bed. But nope, the universe had other plans. The house was locked, and not a soul was in sight. I sat on the steps, confusion slowly turning to worry, then to a kind of desperate loneliness as the hours ticked by. Mrs. Henderson from next door came over, her brows furrowed in concern. "Dear, why are you sitting out here? Didn't your folks tell you they were heading out for the weekend? That's when it hit me. They left. Without a word, without a thought. Tears sprang to my eyes, and Mrs. Henderson tooted, shaking her head. "Oh, honey, come here," she said, but I shook my head, wiping at my eyes. "I'll figure something out," I mumbled, my voice all choked up. It was getting late, the kind of late that makes everything seem worse, so I made my way to Aunt Lily's. My heart felt like it was sitting heavy in my chest, each step heavier than the last. Knocking on Aunt Lily's door felt like admitting defeat, but the moment she opened it and saw my face, her expression shifted from surprise to something fierce. "Anna? What happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. I spilled everything, the words tumbling out in a rush, and by the end, Aunt Lily's face was set in a hard line. She dialed my dad, her tone sharp as broken glass. "Joe, your daughter was locked out, left on the doorstep like a forgotten package. What's going on?" Dad's voice came through the phone, all casual like we were discussing the weather. "Oh, that. We thought she was with you. Don't make a drama out of it, Lily. If you're so concerned, she can stay with you." Aunt Lily's eyes flashed, and I knew that was it. "Fine, Joe. She'll stay with me. Someone's got to look after her," she snapped, hanging up before he could reply. That night, Aunt Lily made space for me, a little nook in her apartment that felt more welcoming and warm than my entire house had felt in months. "You're with me now, kiddo. We'll make it work, you and me," she said, her voice soft but determined. And I stayed with her. Later, as I could understand with my childish mind, she got the status of guardian over me. Life with Aunt Lily was different. We didn't have much, stretching every dollar till it screamed, but there was laughter in that small apartment, and a kind of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. We were a team, tackling everything from bills to grocery shopping with a can-do spirit that made even the hard days seem okay. Living with Aunt Lily, things started to look up in ways I hadn't dared to hope. She pushed me, always in that tough love way of hers, to not let the past define my future. "You're smarter than you give yourself credit for, kiddo. Use that brain for something big," she'd say, nudging me towards the stack of college brochures piled on our tiny kitchen table. I hit the books hard. School became my escape, a place where I could prove to myself, and maybe a bit to my parents, wherever they were, that I was more than just a forgotten daughter. Nights were long, filled with study sessions that stretched until the streetlights outside flickered off. One evening, Aunt Lily caught me dozing off into my textbook. "You're burning the candle at both ends, Anna. Don't run yourself ragged." I rubbed my eyes, yawning. "I've gotta. Scholarships, Aunt Lily. It's the only way I'm getting into college." She sat down next to me, her voice serious. "I know, honey. Just, don't forget to breathe. You've got this, but don't forget to live a little too." Her words stuck with me, a gentle reminder that while the future was important, so was the present. When acceptance letters started rolling in, Aunt Lily and I jumped around our living room like a couple of loons. I had done it, full ride to study political science. The joy in Aunt Lily's eyes was something I'd carry with me forever. "You did it, Anna. I'm so damn proud of you." College was a whirlwind. Between classes, I snagged a part-time job and applied for every scholarship under the sun. Money was tight, and every little bit helped. Aunt Lily did her part too, working extra shifts, always with that uncomplaining resilience that defined her. "Every penny towards your future," she'd say, slipping me a few extra dollars she'd saved up from tips. I graduated top of my class, fueled by a blend of Aunt Lily's unwavering support and my own stubborn determination. The day I walked across that stage, diploma in hand, I saw Aunt Lily in the crowd, cheering louder than anyone. I couldn't help but think, this is for us. Landing a job after college felt like the next big leap. It wasn't just any job either. A renowned think tank had seen potential in me, a kid from nowhere with nothing but grit and a degree. "You're going to do great things, Anna. I just know it," Aunt Lily said, her voice thick with emotion, the night before my first day. Yeah, but only because you believed in me first, I replied, knowing full well that none of this would have been possible without her. As my career took off, so did the rest of my life. Landing a job at a prestigious think tank was just the start. My days were filled with research, policy analysis, and even the occasional TV appearance to discuss the latest political developments. It was exhilarating, the kind of life I'd dreamed of but never really believed I'd achieve. One evening, after a particularly successful panel discussion on television, Aunt Lily and I sat in our living room, a modest but cozy space we'd made our own over the years. She was flipping through the channels, trying to find a rerun of the discussion. "Look at you, all smart and important on the TV. Makes an aunt proud," she said, not looking away from the screen. I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Come on, Aunt Lily. It's just a panel. Besides, I wouldn't be here without you." "That's right, you wouldn't," she teased, finally settling on the channel just as my segment replayed. "But don't sell yourself short. You're doing the work, Anna. You're making a difference." It was moments like these that I cherished the most. Despite the success and the busy schedule, Aunt Lily kept me grounded. She reminded me of where I came from and what really mattered. Then came Mark, a fellow political scientist I met at a conference. He was passionate, smart, and, unlike me, incredibly outgoing. We hit it off immediately, finding common ground in our work and our shared vision for the future. Introducing him to Aunt Lily was a nerve-wracking experience. They were the two most important people in my life, and I desperately wanted them to get along. "So, you're the young man who's stolen Anna's heart," Aunt Lily said, eyeing Mark with a mix of skepticism and curiosity as we sat down for dinner one night. Mark chuckled, not missing a beat. "Stolen is such a strong word. I'd like to think she gave it willingly." Aunt Lily snorted, but I could tell she was impressed. "Well, as long as you keep her happy and support her dreams, we won't have a problem." Mark reached for my hand across the table. "Nothing is more important to me," he said, and I believed him. Our life together blossomed from there. We got married in a small, intimate ceremony with Aunt Lily officiating. It was perfect, a celebration of love, family, and new beginnings. When we moved to a new state for Mark's business ventures, it was a big change, but it felt right. We built a large, warm house that soon echoed with the laughter of our two daughters, Emily and Sophie. Aunt Lily moved in with us, taking on the role of doting grandmother with gusto. My career continued to thrive. I participated in debates, led election campaigns, and even received an award from the state governor for my charitable work. It was a far cry from the lonely, forgotten girl I once was. Despite the early hardships, the loss, and the struggles, I'd found success, love, and a family that was mine by choice, not just by blood. Aunt Lily, Mark, Emily, Sophie, they were my world, a testament to the fact that with enough love and determination, you can build a future worth dreaming of. Walking back from a big interview, my mind was buzzing with thoughts of how it went and the questions I could have answered better. That's when I saw them in the parking lot, two figures looking lost and out of place. As I got closer, a wave of surprise hit me. It was my parents, the very same who'd left me to fend for myself all those years ago. "Can I help you?" I asked, even though I recognized them immediately. "Anna, it's us. We saw you on TV," my mom started, her voice overlapping with my dad's. "We're so proud of you, darling," my dad added, trying to find the right words. "We've missed you. We want to be part of your life again." I couldn't hide my astonishment, nor the bitterness that quickly followed. My life? Now? My family is Aunt Lily, Mark, and my girls. You chose to leave that life behind. They looked desperate, almost as if they were clawing at the last straws of hope. "Please, Anna, we're your parents. We made mistakes, but we're family." That's when I pressed them, needing to understand their sudden reappearance. "Why now? What's changed?" The story spilled out. My brother, chasing his musical dreams over the path they had chosen for him, leaving them to face their crumbling world alone. My father's neglect of the business leading to its downfall, my mother's lack of work experience leaving them without a safety net. Their house, once a symbol of their future, now on the market with nowhere else to turn. Listening to them, I felt a mix of emotions. There was a part of me that wanted to help, to extend the compassion I'd learned to embody through my political career. Yet, another part of me remembered the nights spent locked out, the birthdays forgotten, the milestones uncelebrated. Standing there on the street, I didn't hold back. You remember when you tossed Aunt Lily out, right? Or how about the time you left me sitting on the porch, locked out of the house? Yeah, I haven't forgotten that, I told them, each word heavy with years of unspoken hurt. I could see the realization dawning on their faces, the weight of their actions finally sinking in. But it was too late for regrets. I reached into my purse, pulled out some cash, and handed it to them. This should cover your trip back. I think it's best if you leave now. Watching them walk away was like closing a book on a long, painful chapter of my life. But there was one call I needed to make, to my brother, the one person who truly understood what it was like growing up in our household. Hey, it's me. I started, the moment he picked up. Guess who just paid me a visit? His laugh came through the phone, light and knowing. Let me guess, our dear old folks? Yeah, but I handled it. Told them we're doing just fine without their sudden guilt trip, I said, feeling a mix of relief and strength. I'm proud of you, sis. You've always been the strong one, he replied, his voice warm and reassuring. How's the tour going? I asked, changing the subject to something lighter. It's amazing. You wouldn't believe the crowds we're drawing. Guess I'm finally living the dream, huh? His excitement was palpable, and it made me smile. Always knew you would. Just promise me you'll swing by here on your next tour. The girls would love to see their uncle rock the stage. Wouldn't miss it for the world, he promised. Take care, sis. Love you. Love you too. Hanging up, I felt a profound sense of peace. My life had come full circle in so many ways. Here I was, a successful woman, surrounded by people who loved me for me. Aunt Lily, Mark, my girls, and even my brother, from afar, formed the fabric of my true family. My name's Chloe. I'm 29, a lawyer, not the kind you see on TV, but the real deal. Work's my life, or at least it was until that messed up morning my car decided to die on me. Standing there, on the edge of the road, watching the tow truck haul my car away, I was fuming. Late for work, with no ride, and my phone dying. Just great. Then this guy, Mike, stops by. First thing he says, looks like you could use a hand. He's casual, driving this old pickup that's seen better days, but there's something about him. I'm thinking, do I really want to get into a stranger's truck? But then, what choice did I have? Only if you're heading towards downtown, I said, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. Downtown it is. Hop in. He shot back with a grin that could disarm you at 20 paces. His confidence was something else. The ride was something out of a movie. We talked, or more like, he did most of the talking. Told me about his job in construction, how he loves it but hates waking up early. I shared bits about my lawyering, careful not to dive too deep into the boring details. You always pick up strangers? I asked, half joking. Only the ones who look like they won't murder me in my sleep. He laughed. That got me. His humor, it was dry, kind of like mine. We exchanged numbers before he dropped me off. In case your car decides to bail on you again, he said. I rolled my eyes, but smiled. Didn't think much of it then. Work was a blur, but I couldn't shake off the morning's adventure. Mike's number burned a hole in my phone. On a whim, I texted him. My car's a traitor, but you're not. Coffee? He replied almost instantly. Thought you'd never ask. Mike and we clicked. Not just on the surface, but deep down. He got my jokes, didn't mind my rants about work, and somehow, seeing him became the best part of my day. Weird how life works. One day you're cursing the heavens for a broken down car, and the next, you're waiting for a text from the guy who offered you a ride. That ride changed everything. Looking back, it's funny how moments like these, totally random, unplanned, can set the course of your whole life. But back then, I was just enjoying the ride, pun intended. Meeting Mike was a breath of fresh air, a reminder that sometimes, the best things come from the most unexpected places. And as for my car, well, it got fixed, but I found myself hoping for more mornings like that one, stranded or not. And sure enough, he called later that week, asking me out. We met up at this no-frills cafe, nothing fancy, just a cozy spot where we could talk. And talk we did. It was easy, like we'd known each other for ages. He made me laugh, listened to my rants, and somehow, time just flew by. After Mike and I got serious, he started talking about meeting his family. I was nervous, sure, but figured it was just another step in our thing. Mike had told me loads about his mom and sister, how they were this tight little clan since forever. I respected that. But nothing could have prepped me for the actual meet. We pulled up to their house, a cozy-looking place with a wild garden out front. Mike had this brace yourself look as we walked up. Remember, they're a bit intense, he warned, ringing the bell. Intense? I echoed, raising an eyebrow. I'm a lawyer, Mike. I deal with intense for breakfast. The door swung open, and there stood his mom, Carol, and sister, Lucy. First impressions? Carol had the scrutinizing gaze that could peel paint, and Lucy seemed to mirror her, minus a few years. Mike. And you must be Chloe, Carol said, her voice sweet but her eyes doing a full audit. Come in, come in. The living room was like stepping into a different era, all antique furniture and photos. Mike introduced me properly, and we sat down, the air thick with anticipation. So, Chloe, Carol started, all casual. Mike tells us you're a lawyer. That must be interesting. Yeah, it's got its moments, I replied, trying to keep it light. Lucy chimed in. Must rake in a pretty penny, huh? I laughed, a bit taken aback. Well, it pays the bills, and then some. Mike shot me a look, a mix of apology and I told you so. The conversation steered into downright nosy territory real quick. Carol leaned in. But exactly how much are we talking? You know, just out of curiosity. Ah, trade secret, I quipped, hoping my smile hid my discomfort. Mike tried to change the subject, bless him, but the two were like bloodhounds on a scent. After dinner, which was an interrogation disguised as a meal, I heard them in the living room, speculating about my salary based on the brands I wore and the car I drove. Mike found me in the kitchen, refilling my glass. Hey, they're just protective. Don't mind them. Protective? I muttered, swirling my drink. Feels more like an inquisition. We tried to make the best of the rest of the evening, but it was clear there was a gap between us and them. As we left, Carol's too sweet goodbye and Lucy's smug wave felt like a challenge. On the drive back, Mike kept apologizing. They can be a bit much. I'm sorry, Chloe. It's fine, I said, though it wasn't, really. Just wasn't expecting the Spanish Inquisition. Mike laughed, that easy sound I'd fallen for. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. It was our first real test, meeting his family. I thought back to my own, no-nonsense folks who valued privacy and respect. Mike's family was another world, one where boundaries seemed optional and every detail of your life was up for debate. But I liked Mike a lot. Enough to weather a bit of family drama. Still, as we headed home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Little did I know how right I was. Marrying Mike was like a whirlwind. Everything happened so fast, from the proposal to planning the wedding. I thought maybe, just maybe, tying the knot would smooth things over with his mom, Carol, and his sister, Lucy. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. Our wedding day was a blur of flowers, vows, and a small sea of faces. Despite the rush, I caught Carol and Lucy throwing looks that could curdle milk. I brushed it off, focusing on Mike and the new chapter we were starting. At the reception, Carol cornered me. "Chloe, dear, this is quite the event. You must have spent a fortune." I forced a smile. "It's a special day. We wanted it to be memorable." Lucy piped up from behind her mom. "Yeah, memorable and expensive. Hope Mike knows what he signed up for." I bit back a sharper retort. "We're both happy. That's what matters." The tension didn't end with the wedding. If anything, it ramped up. Carol and Lucy started dropping by our place unannounced, each visit an exercise in patience. They critiqued everything from my cooking to how I decorated our apartment. One evening, they outdid themselves. Carol, gloved hand and all, dragged her finger across the top of our bookshelf and sked at the dust she found. "Really, Chloe, cleanliness is next to godliness," she said, smirking. Lucy was quick to join in. "Yeah, and I guess we're living among mortals here." I clenched my jaw, counting to 10 in my head. Well, I didn't realize we were hosting royalty. My mistake. Mike, ever the peacemaker, tried to laugh it off. "Come on, you three. Let's not start World War III over a little dust." But the visits grew more frequent and their comments more cutting. I started dreading the sound of the doorbell. Each time they left, I felt more like an intruder in my own home. I finally broke down and told Mike how I was feeling. "Your mom and sister, they're making my life hell. It's like they're marking their territory, and I'm the outsider." Mike looked torn. "I know it's tough, but they're family. They just need time to adjust. I'll talk to them, okay?" But talking seemed to translate to nodding along while they ranted about me not being good enough. Things reached a boiling point one day when they came over, criticizing the dinner I'd made. "This is interesting," Carol said, poking at her food. Lucy snorted. "Interesting is one word for it." Fed up, I snapped. "You know, not everyone can be a Michelin star chef. If you don't like it, maybe next time you can cook." That shut them up for all of 5 seconds. Mike's attempt to smooth things over didn't help much. "Chloe's right. Let's appreciate the effort, okay?" The effort felt futile, though. No matter what I did, it was never enough. They wanted me to change, to mold into whatever perfect daughter-in-law image they had in their heads. But that wasn't me. I'd hit my limit with Carol and Lucy's endless nagging and snide remarks. Their arrogance was something else, like they were the queens of some small kingdom and I was the unwelcome commoner. I'd told Mike about how they were grinding me down, hoping he'd step in. His response? "I'll talk to them," he said, his voice so wishy-washy it made me see red. It was clear as day he didn't want to rock the boat, preferring to stand on the sidelines of this mess. That was the last straw for me. I wasn't about to play the silent sufferer in my own home. If Mike wasn't going to stand up to them, I sure as hell would. The next time they decided to grace us with their presence, I had a plan. We were all sitting around the dinner table, the air already thick with tension. I saw my moment and took it. "Mike's got something he wants to say," I declared, throwing him a look that I hoped would light a fire under him. Mike went red, fumbling for words. Yeah. Mom, Lucy, you should really show Chloe some respect," he mumbled, barely meeting anyone's eyes. You could have heard a pin drop. Carol's face went from 0 to furious in a heartbeat. "Respect?" she spat, her anger not aimed at Mike, but squarely at me. "I will not let you cause a rift between my son and me." The room felt like it was spinning. Here we were, the whole sorry mess out in the open. Mike was squirming, looking anywhere but at us. Carol was in full battle mode, and Lucy? She just sat there, smirking like she was watching her favorite show. "I'm not trying to start anything," I shot back, my voice steady even if my insides were anything but. "I'm just saying, this is my home too. I deserve to be treated with some kind of decency." Carol snorted, a sound full of disdain. "Decency? This isn't about decency. It's about you trying to wedge yourself between me and my children." The accusation was ludicrous. All I'd ever wanted was to find some common ground, to be part of their family, not tear it apart. But standing there, facing Carol's wrath and Mike's silence, I felt a cold realization settle in. Maybe this was a battle I couldn't win. As the evening spiraled into a blur of heated words and cold silences, I wondered how we'd ever recover. Mike's half-hearted attempt at support had only thrown gasoline on the fire, and now I was the villain in Carol's story, the woman who dared to stand up for herself. The confrontation had been meant to clear the air, to finally draw some boundaries. Instead, it felt like I'd only succeeded in drawing battle lines, with me on one side and the family I'd hoped to join on the other. And Mike? He was still somewhere in the middle, unwilling or unable to choose a side. After that fight, my life turned upside down. Carol, my mother-in-law, made it her mission to make my existence a living hell. She'd pop over when I was dead on my feet from work, starting drama out of thin air. And when Mike got home, there she was, all tears and sob stories, claiming I was the villain, hurling insults her way. Mike, bless him, fell for it every time. We'd end up in arguments, him siding with Carol, leaving me feeling like I was taking crazy pills. It was like I was the outsider in my own marriage, speaking a language no one else understood. But it didn't stop there. A friend of mine let slip that Lucy was out there, telling anyone who'd listen that I was dirty in my work, hinting I was pocketing client money without paying taxes. That was the last straw. I'm no saint, but I don't mess around with my profession. I called Lucy, my words sharp as knives. You know, spreading lies about someone's work is called slander. And that can get you sued. Lucy's bravado crumbled real quick over the phone. I'll stop. I didn't mean anything by it, she stammered, the fear in her voice clear as day. But the damage was done. She went crying to Mike, playing the victim, and before I knew it, I was getting an earful. Why are you bullying Lucy? Can't you see she's scared of you? Mike's anger was a red flag, signaling deeper issues in our marriage. Every day, I felt more like an outsider, a stranger in a world where Carol and Lucy reigned supreme, and Mike was their loyal subject. The more I saw it, the more I realized, I was the odd one out, always going to be second to his mother and sister. The battles at home were one thing, but Lucy trying to tarnish my professional reputation? That was a low blow, even for them. I started to wonder if Mike would ever really have my back, or if I was doomed to be the villain in their twisted family drama. The phone call from Carol had been as pleasant as nails on a chalkboard. Lucy's tying the knot. We're celebrating at Le Grande Plateau this Friday. You're coming, she stated, her voice broking no argument. My heart sank. The last thing I wanted was to spend an evening in the lion's den, but Mike was all about mending fences. It could be good for us, a fresh start, he argued with that eternal optimism of his. Reluctantly, I agreed. Le Grande Plateau was the kind of place where the prices on the menu made you do a double take, wondering if you'd accidentally wandered into a car dealership instead. Carol, Lucy, the groom-to-be, and his parents were already seated, attacking a seafood platter like it was their last meal. No sooner had we taken our seats than Carol dropped the bomb. Chloe, darling, we thought it'd be lovely if you covered tonight's feast. A small gesture to cement your place in our family, she announced, loud enough for neighboring tables to overhear. I nearly spat out my drink. You're joking, right? You expect me to foot the bill for this extravaganza? The table fell eerily silent, all eyes on me. Lucy, never one to miss a beat, added, "Oh, come on, don't be such a tightwad, Chloe. It's not every day your sister-in-law gets engaged." I felt like I was in the twilight zone. Look, I came here to show support, not to bankroll Lucy's engagement party. This is beyond ridiculous. Carol's expression hardened. I specifically chose this venue with the expectation you'd contribute. It's about showing respect, Chloe. My gaze flickered to Mike, desperate for him to say something, anything, in my defense. His response floored me. "She's right, Chloe. Just pay. We don't need more drama. You'll pay, otherwise we'll get divorced." I was flabbergasted. "So, it's pay up or get out? Is that my choice? Are you seriously siding with them on this?" Carol's smirk told me everything I needed to know. She thought she had won. But something inside me refused to let that happen. "You want a divorce over this? Fine. Let's do it. I'm not your puppet." You could have heard a pin drop. The shock on their faces was a bittersweet victory. I stood, my chair scraping loudly against the tile. I've had enough. Enough of the manipulation, the insults, and this sham of a marriage. As I stormed out, their bitter words followed me, but they bounced off me like I was made of steel. I was done. Done playing the villain in their messed up family drama. Driving away, a torrent of emotions overwhelmed me. Fear, relief, anger, but above all, a sense of liberation. I'd finally stood up for myself, drawn a line in the sand. After the restaurant showdown, I went back to what used to be our place, now just a space filled with memories I couldn't wait to leave behind. Packing was a blur, each item a reminder of a life that felt like someone else's story. Once everything was boxed up, I filed for divorce. No dramatic confrontations, just a quiet end to a chapter one was ready to close for good. Word got around quickly, not just about the divorce, but about the fallout from that disastrous dinner. Turns out, Carol had tried to pull the same stunt with the groom's parents, insisting they cover the extravagant bill. That backfired spectacularly. The groom, fed up with the family's antics, called off the engagement with Lucy. You'd think that'd give them a moment's pause, a second of self-reflection, but no. Instead, Carol and Lucy pinned the blame squarely on me. According to the rumor mill, I was the villain of the piece, a greedy, heartless woman who'd torn their family apart. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. The aftermath of that explosive dinner wasn't pretty. Word got around fast, too fast. My phone was buzzing nonstop, texts and calls pouring in from friends and, unfortunately, acquaintances who'd heard some version of the night's events. The rumors were wild, painting me as everything from a heartless villain to a downtrodden victim. I ignored most of them, but it was one call that I couldn't just swipe away, my mom. "Chloe, honey, what's this mess I'm hearing about you and Mike? And something about a restaurant blow up?" Her voice was a mix of concern and confusion. I sighed, rubbing the bridge of my nose. "It's a long story, Mom. The short version?" I stood up for myself, and things didn't go well. There was a pause on the other end, and then, "Well, I always said that woman was trouble. You're better off without them, you know." Hearing my mom say it out loud, it hit different. It was one thing to walk away, but another to hear that maybe, just maybe, I did the right thing. Yeah, I know. Just didn't expect everything to implode like this. A few weeks after I'd moved out, I ran into one of our mutual friends, Jenna, at the coffee shop. She wasted no time diving into the latest gossip. "Chloe, I heard about the split, and everything else. Carol's been saying some wild stuff, you know?" I took a sip of my coffee, already knowing where this was headed. "Let me guess, it's all my fault? I'm the wicked witch who ruined their lives." Jenna looked uncomfortable, but nodded. "Yeah, something like that. Lucy's engagement is off, and they're saying you're to blame for the dinner fiasco, too." I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter. Of course, they are. Because it's easier to blame me than admit they're a pair of entitled, manipulative. "Hey, I know it's tough," Jenna cut in, "but you're better off without that drama." Despite the rumors, the whispers, and the blame game, there was a sense of relief that came with being free of it all. Free of Carol's constant meddling, Lucy's passive-aggressive jabs, and the never-ending cycle of drama that came with being part of their family. As I navigated my new life, word got back to me about Mike and his current living situation. Turns out, after our divorce, he moved right back in with Carol and Lucy. The three of them, all under one roof again. The thought brought a mix of emotions, but mostly, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was confirmation that walking away was the right choice, not just for me, but for my peace of mind. I heard through the grapevine, snippets of conversations at local cafes and the occasional overheard chat at the grocery store, that their antics hadn't stopped with me. If anything, they ramped up. Stories of Carol's latest schemes and Lucy's outlandish demands were making the rounds, painting a picture of a family consumed by their own greed and arrogance. Their reputation in town took hit after hit, each rumor another nail in the coffin of their social standing. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, the drama that had once consumed my life started to feel like a distant memory. I was settling into my new normal, finding peace in the quiet moments and solace in my work. One crisp autumn evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Alex, a colleague I'd become close friends with over the last few months. "Drinks tonight? You need a break, and I've got some big news." Curious and in dire need of a distraction, I agreed. We met at a cozy little bar downtown, a world away from the high-stakes drama that used to define my evenings. "So, spill it. What's this big news?" I asked, sipping on my drink, the warmth of the whiskey a welcome reprieve from the chill outside. Alex's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I'm starting my own firm, and I want you on board. You're one of the best lawyers I know, Chloe. What do you say?" The offer took me by surprise. It was the kind of opportunity I'd dreamed of, but in the whirlwind of my personal life, I'd forgotten how much I longed for a fresh professional start too. Wow, Alex. That's incredible. I'm honored, really. Let me think it over." The next morning, I woke up feeling more determined than ever. I called Alex, my decision made. "Let's do it. I'm in." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. We found an office space, started building our client list, and every day felt like a step towards something exciting, something mine. And then, amidst the chaos of starting the new firm, I bumped into Mike. It was the first time we'd seen each other since the divorce was finalized. The encounter was awkward, charged with the ghosts of our shared past. "Chloe, hey, you're looking good," he said, the words feeling like a peace offering of sorts. "Thanks, Mike. You too. How's everything?" "We're getting by. Mom and Lucy, they're still them, you know?" I nodded, no longer feeling the sting of their names. "I'm sure they are. Listen, Mike, I wish you all the best, really." As I walked away, I realized that this was what moving on felt like. It wasn't forgetting the past but learning from it, not dwelling on the hurt but focusing on the growth that came from it. I was moving forward, one step at a time, into a future that was all mine to shape. My name's Alex, and I guess you could say I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, but that spoon might as well have been a shovel, digging me deeper into a life I never asked for. My twin sister Emma and we grew up in a mansion with more rooms than reasons to laugh. Dad co-owned a tech company that was the talk of the town, and Mom, well, she ran the household like a tight ship, her only job making sure Emma and I lived up to the family name. From the get-go, it was clear Emma was the star. Straight A's, head of her debate team, and a whiz at chess. Me? I could barely keep up with the multiplication tables. But that didn't stop Dad from pitting us against each other, like some twisted version of Survivor where the loser got grounded from life's little comforts. "Dad, why can't I just quit math club? I hate it," I'd moan, dragging my feet through our marble-floored hallway. "Quit? Winners don't quit, Alex. You think life's gonna hand you everything on a silver platter?" Dad would scoff, never looking up from his evening paper. "But Emma's better at it." "I want to try music," I'd protest, hoping for a sliver of support. "Music? That's a hobby, Alex. It won't pay your bills or keep this roof over your head," he'd snap back, his voice echoing off the high ceilings, dismissing my dreams like crumbs from the dinner table. Emma, bless her, she tried to be the peacemaker, but even she couldn't bridge the gap widening between us. Alex, just play their game for now. We'll figure it out, she'd whisper, her eyes scanning the room for eavesdropping ears. But playing the game meant endless tutors, extra classes, and competitions where my only trophy was the title of the other twin. My parents had our lives mapped out, Princeton for college, then a cushy spot at Dad's company. A perfect plan for the perfect daughter. Only problem? I wasn't her. One evening, the whole charade came crashing down at the dinner table. Dad was going on about Emma's latest achievement, some national science fair, while I poked at my food, wishing I was anywhere but there. Alex, why can't you be more like your sister? Look at her, making us proud, Mom chimed in, her voice sharp enough to cut through the tension. I slammed my fork down, my patience finally snapping. Maybe, 'cause I don't want to be her. I'm sick of math and science and all this crap. I want music, not this. The room went silent. Dad's face turned a shade I'd never seen before. He stood, his chair scraping against the floor like a warning bell. You think you have a say in this? You'll do as you're told, or you can find yourself another family who'll put up with this nonsense. He bellowed, his voice booming. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Emma looked at me, her face a mix of sympathy and fear, a silent plea to just back down. But I couldn't. Not anymore. My house felt more like a battleground than a home, thanks to Dad's philosophy, competition breeds success. He wasn't just talking about business, no, he made sure Emma and I lived it. Every grade, every award was another round in the ring, and more often than not, I was on the losing end. One morning, I remember walking down to breakfast, the smell of pancakes filling the air. It should have been a good start to any day, but not in our house. Not when report cards had come in the day before. Look at this, Dad said, waving Emma's report card in the air like he'd won the lottery. Straight A's. Emma, you're setting the bar high. Emma, sitting prim and proper, just nodded, a small smile on her face. She was the good daughter, after all. And then we have Alex, Dad continued, his tone dropping as he tossed my report card on the table. A couple of B's and C's stared back at me, mocking me. I grabbed a piece of toast, not hungry but needing to do something with my hands. Yeah, so? It's not like I failed. Dad's eyes narrowed. Not failed? Alex, in this family, it's A's or nothing. You know the rules. The rules. More like Dad's law. Emma got the new clothes, the special treatment, and there I was, wearing the same jeans I had for the past year, the fabric thinning but not as much as my patience. I don't get it, Dad. It's just a couple of grades. Why does everything have to be a competition? I asked, my voice rising. Because, Alex, that's life. You think you're gonna get anywhere with those grades? You think you'll be anything more than average? Dad shot back, his words like daggers. Emma tried to play peacemaker, as always. Dad, maybe if we helped each other out more, instead of competing, we could both do better. Dad scoffed, helping? No. You need to push each other. Only the best for my daughters. I remember looking down at my plate, appetite gone. So, what? Since I didn't get straight A's, I don't get lunch today? No lunch, no new clothes. You know the deal, Alex. Maybe next time, you'll try harder, Dad said, his voice cold and final. The rest of breakfast was silent. Emma ate her pancakes, Dad read his newspaper, and I just sat there, stewing in anger and frustration. It wasn't just about the clothes or the food, it was about being seen as less in my own father's eyes. After breakfast, I went up to my room, slamming the door behind me. Emma followed, knocking softly. Alex, you okay? She asked, her voice laced with concern. Do I look okay? I'm sick of this, Em. Sick of being compared, of never being good enough. I spat out, my words harsh, but honest. Emma sat down beside me, her hand on my back. I know, it sucks. But we're stuck in this together, right? Maybe we can find a way to make it work, to get through to Dad. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, right. Dad changing his mind? That'll be the day. Life at home was like walking on a tightrope, with every step calculated to avoid the next lecture or comparison. But whenever I could, I'd sneak away to my room, plug in my old, beaten-up headphones, and lose myself in music. It was my secret garden, a place where grades and competitions didn't exist. One day, I mustered the courage to bring it up at dinner. The table was set, and the air was filled with the usual tension that accompanied our meals. Dad was going on about some business deal, and Emma was sharing her latest school project. It felt like now or never. Hey, I've been thinking, I started, my voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent. I want to learn music. Like, really learn it. Maybe take some singing lessons or piano. Dad's fork paused midair, and Mom's gaze snapped to me, her expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. Music? Dad finally said, his voice flat. Alex, we've been over this. Your focus should be on your studies, on getting into a good college. But I am focusing. Can't I have something for me? Something that actually makes me happy? I pushed back, feeling a mix of fear and defiance. Happy? You think life's about doing what makes you happy? Dad laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Real life is about making sacrifices, doing what's necessary. Music is a hobby, Alex, not a career. Emma glanced at me, her eyes filled with a silent apology. She knew how much this meant to me, but she also knew arguing with Dad was like talking to a brick wall. I don't see why I can't do both. Study and music, I argued, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. Because I said so, Dad shot back, his voice rising. We're not spending money on some whim when you should be improving your grades. End of discussion. Mom nodded in agreement, her usual stance. Your sister is setting the example, Alex. Why can't you just follow her lead? The rest of dinner passed in silence. I barely touched my food, my appetite gone with my dreams. Later, Emma came to my room, knocking softly. Alex, don't let them get to you. You're talented, and you know it, she whispered, sitting on the edge of my bed. Talented? Right. If I was, they'd actually listen to me, I mumbled, staring at the ceiling. It was the end of what felt like the longest year ever. School was a blur of exams, essays, and endless lectures about our future, specifically, a future my parents had mapped out for us. For Emma, it seemed like smooth sailing. For me? A shipwreck in slow motion. I was in my room, trying to drown out the world with some music, when Emma burst in, her face flushed with excitement. Alex, the letters came. My heart sank. College acceptance letters. The ones that would apparently make or break our lives, according to Dad. Emma was waving hers in the air, a big, fat envelope from Princeton. I got in. Congrats, I mumbled, my voice drowned out by the jealousy and fear gnawing at me. Haven't checked mine yet. Emma's smile faltered. Come on, let's look together. It's gotta be good news. We found my letter, a thinner envelope that felt like it weighed a ton. I opened it with shaking hands, scanning the words quickly before they blurred into nothingness. I didn't get in. Emma wrapped an arm around me, but I shrugged her off, feeling a mix of relief and despair. I didn't even want to go to Princeton, but explaining that to my parents would be like talking to a brick wall. Dinner that night was when everything exploded. Mom and Dad were already halfway through a bottle of wine, celebrating Emma's acceptance. Here's to Emma, following in the family's footsteps, Dad toasted, beaming. And Alex? Mom asked, turning to me with a raised eyebrow. I took a deep breath. I didn't get in. The room went silent. Dad's face turned a shade of red I'd only seen a few times in my life. What do you mean you didn't get in? Did we not spend enough money on your tutors, your prep courses? How could you be so careless? I tried, okay? Maybe Princeton just wasn't the right place for me. I shot back, my voice rising. Not the right place? Do you hear yourself? You've embarrassed us, Alex. Thrown away every opportunity, Dad yelled, slamming his fist on the table. Mom chimed in, her voice cold and sharp. We expected better. Your sister managed just fine. Why can't you? That's enough. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I never wanted Princeton. I never wanted any of this. I want music, not some business degree. Dad looked like he might explode. Music? Is that your excuse? You're a disappointment. I felt something inside me snap. Fine. If I'm such a disappointment, maybe I shouldn't be here at all. Dad's eyes narrowed. Is that so? You think you can make it on your own? Fine. There's the door. Don't come back begging when the real world chews you up and spits you out. After the showdown at home, I didn't have much of a plan, just a bag of clothes and a heart full of broken dreams. But there was one person who had always been my anchor in the stormiest seas, Grandma Jean. She lived states away, a fact that seemed more like a blessing now. It meant distance from the chaos of my current life. I scraped together what little money I had and bought a train ticket. The journey was a blur, each clickety-clack of the train tracks a step further away from my old life. When I finally made it to Grandma Jean's, I was a mix of relief and exhaustion. Her house, with its familiar cozy warmth, felt like a safe haven for the first time in forever. I spilled everything to Grandma the moment I walked through the door, the fight, leaving home, my dreams of music. She listened, her brows furrowing and unfurrowing, her lips pressed into a thin line now and then. Alex, you've always been the brave one, she said, her voice soft but firm. Staying true to yourself in a world that wants to change you, that takes guts. But what do I do now, Grandma? I feel like I've just jumped off a cliff without knowing if there's water below, I confessed, feeling the weight of my choices. Grandma Jean chuckled, the sound warm and comforting. Well, you swim, darling. You swim hard. And about this music dream of yours, you said you applied to a music institute? I nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. Yeah, in secret. I even got an audition date set before everything blew up. Grandma's smile then was like the sun breaking through clouds. Then that's what we'll do. We'll go to that audition, and you'll show them just how bright you can shine. The idea was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. But I barely know the first thing about auditioning. What if I mess it up? Then you'll learn, and we'll try again. But something tells me you won't need to, she said, her confidence in me a stark contrast to the doubts swirling inside my head. The day of the audition came faster than I thought possible. Grandma Jean and I went to the institute together, her hand on my back, a steady presence. Walking into that audition room felt like stepping onto a battlefield, my nerve soldiers ready to turn tail. But then I sang, my voice steadier than I felt, pouring every ounce of emotion I had into the notes. The room was silent for a heartbeat after I finished, a silence so complete I feared I'd failed before one of the teachers finally spoke. Your voice, it's quite remarkable. Clear, emotive, and strong. You've got a raw talent that's hard to come by, one of them said, and just like that, the weight lifted. I had done it. I was in. As we walked out of the institute, Grandma Jean's arm around my shoulders, I felt lighter than I had in years. You did it, Alex. I'm so proud of you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. The buzz of the first few weeks at the Music Institute was something else. Every day felt like I was walking on air, surrounded by music, by dreams like mine but unique in their melody. Grandma Jean was my rock, making sure I didn't float away into the clouds of my newfound world. One evening, as I was noodling around on the piano in the common room, trying to get a feel for a tune that had been stuck in my head, a couple of guys walked in. They looked about my age, carrying guitars and a sense of purpose. Hey, that's pretty good. You got a name? One of them, a tall guy with a mop of curly hair, asked. Alex, I replied, a bit taken aback by the sudden company. I'm Luke, and this is Mark. We're trying to put together a band, and we need someone who can handle the keys. You interested? Me? In a band? The idea seemed as far-fetched as flying to the moon. I don't know. I've never really played with others before. Luke grinned. Perfect. Neither have we. It'll be a grand adventure. Grandma Jean thought it was a fantastic idea. You need to mingle, make friends, and what better way than through the universal language of music? So, I joined Luke and Mark, and we started jamming together, finding our sound in the clash and harmony of our instruments. It was raw, exhilarating, and utterly terrifying all at once. One day, after a particularly good session, Mark, ever the dreamer, said, "We should record some of this stuff. Put it out there, see what happens." Out there, as in the internet? I asked, skeptical. Do you think anyone would even listen? Luke's confidence was infectious. Why not? We've got something good going here. Let's share it. So, we did. We recorded a couple of songs, rough around the edges, but full of heart, and uploaded them online. I didn't expect much, why would I? But then, something crazy happened. People listened. Not just a few, but thousands. Then tens of thousands. The comments poured in, everything from "This is amazing" to "Who's the girl on the keys? Her voice is incredible." I couldn't believe it. We had struck a chord, and suddenly, our little band wasn't so little anymore. Local gigs started coming in, each venue bigger than the last. The first time we played live, my hands were shaking so much I could barely hit the right notes. But as the music flowed through us, as I looked out at the sea of faces illuminated by the stage lights, something clicked. This was where I was meant to be. After one show, a guy in a suit approached us, a slick smile plastered on his face. "You kids have got talent. Ever thought about going professional?" We exchanged glances, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Were we ready for this? Grandma Jean's advice was simple. Take the chance, Alex. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Just remember who you are, and don't let the glitz blind you. So, we took the plunge, signing a deal that seemed too good to be true. The gigs got bigger, the crowds louder, and our music spread like wildfire. I was living a dream I hadn't even dared to dream, my voice finding its way into the hearts of strangers. Then, one evening, as I was sifting through our latest batch of comments and basking in the surreal glow of it all, my phone buzzed with a call from Emma. Emma, my twin, the other half of me we'd grown so distant over the years, mired in rivalry and silence. "Alex? Hey, it's me," she said, her voice hesitant over the line. I paused, taken aback. "Emma? Wow, hi. What's up?" "I saw you on YouTube, with your band. You were amazing, Alex," she confessed, and I could hear the sincerity in her voice, a stark contrast to our last cold exchanges. A warmth spread through me. "Really? You think so? Thanks, Em. That means a lot, coming from you." There was a pause, and then Emma let out a sigh. "I wish I had your courage, Alex. I'm here at Princeton, doing what's expected, living this life that feels like it belongs to someone else. Surrounded by these kids who have everything, and yet I've never felt more out of place." Her words struck a chord, echoing my own feelings of being lost in a world where I didn't belong. "Emma, it's never too late to change your path. To find what makes you happy. I know, but it's not that easy. Mom and Dad, they found out about your singing. They're furious, saying you're ruining the family's reputation," she continued, her voice laced with worry. I laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Let them talk. I'm done living for them, Em. This is my life, and I'm going to live it on my terms." As we ended the call, a mix of emotions swirled within me. Pride, for the path I'd chosen. Sadness, for the distance still between us. And determination, to bridge that gap, to rebuild the connection with my sister, not as rivals, but as allies in seeking our own truths, our own happiness. 6 months into the whirlwind that my life had become, with gigs almost every other night and our tracks blasting from speakers in corners of the world I hadn't even visited, I faced a confrontation I hadn't anticipated. Right after a show that felt like our best yet, the backstage drama outdid the onstage energy. Bursting into my dressing room, Dad's face was a storm cloud in human form. "Alex, what do you think you're doing? You're dragging our name through the mud." Grandma Jean, who had been my steadfast supporter at every show, stepped in, her voice the calm in the tempest. "Now, Richard, let's talk about this calmly. There's no need for a scene." The argument escalated quickly, voices rising, until security had to step in. Watching my parents being escorted out was surreal, a scene I'd never imagined in my wildest dreams. Afterwards, Grandma Jean was firm with the venue managers. "I don't want them anywhere near her, not when she's working. It's not just a request, I'm insisting." The next few weeks brought a barrage of texts from Mom and Dad, each one more cutting than the last, predicting doom and gloom for my career. They couldn't see the truth, blinded by their prejudice and disappointment. Fed up, I finally shot back with a link to one of our YouTube videos. "Check the views. Listen to the fans. This is real." The video had exploded, racking up millions of views and comments praising everything from the music to my voice. The silence that followed was telling. They had seen it, the undeniable evidence of my success, and it had rendered them speechless. 2 years zipped by like a fast-forward track. Then, out of the blue, Mom called. Her voice was different, hollow, like the fight had gone out of her. "Alex, I need you to listen, just this once," she started, and something in her tone made me pause. She poured it all out, the bad luck that hit like a wrecking ball. Dad's business crumbled thanks to a backstabbing partner from overseas, leaving them penniless, forcing them to downsize their life to a cramped apartment. Emma, too, was hit by the fallout, pulling out of Princeton to chase a scholarship at a university she actually wanted to attend. And then came the kicker, the apology that sounded years too late. "We were wrong, Alex. I pushed you too hard, loved too little. I'm sorry." Hearing that was like a punch to the gut, but not for the reasons you might think. I was over the anger, past the resentment. "Mom, I can't do this. It's too much water under the bridge." But life had a way of moving on, and so did I. Emma called next, her news a bittersweet mix. She was moving, transferring to a university close by. "Looks like it's going to be us three musketeers again," she said, her voice bright, trying to lift the mood. My music was my escape, my world where I could control the narrative. With Grandma's encouragement and a stroke of luck, I landed a deal with a record label that believed in my vision. My first album dropped, a collection of tracks that felt like reading pages from my diary out loud. The charity concert in my hometown was a trip down memory lane, a reminder of where I started and how far I'd come. After the show, there they were, Mom and Dad. Time hadn't been kind, the years had carved deep lines of hardship across their faces. They wanted to talk, probably to bridge the chasm that had opened up between us, or maybe, as I suspected, because they were in need. I watched them for a moment, a flood of memories washing over me, before turning away. I'm Sarah. Teaching vocal lessons is what gets me up in the morning. At 42, I've seen my share of bright-eyed kids dreaming of the big stage. But it was Emma who brought a twist to my tale. 14, with a voice that needed work but had potential. It was her dad, Jack, though, who flipped my world. "Miss Sarah, my dad's here to pick me up," Emma announced one day, her voice cutting through my thoughts like a sharp knife. I glanced up, expecting the usual parent. But there stood Jack. Not what I expected. Tall, with a look of someone who's seen stuff but kept standing. "Hi, I'm Jack. Emma's been going on about her lessons. You must be Sarah." His voice was straightforward, no frills. I liked that. "Yeah, that's me. Emma's got talent. Just needs a bit more push, I said, offering my hand. His handshake was firm, honest. Appreciate you helping her out. I'm clueless about this stuff. Her mom was the singer. I caught the past tense. I'm sorry, I said, the standard response, but his nod told me he'd heard it a million times. No worries. We're managing. Aren't we, Em? His look towards Emma was full of that silent communication only parents and kids have. Emma rolled her eyes, the universal kid signal for parents, right, but smiled. Yeah, we're good. The conversation should have ended there, but Jack lingered. You know, I'm trying to get her more into music. Keep her busy. Her brother too, Alex. Kid's a ball of energy. I laughed. Music's a great outlet. Keeps them focused on something positive. Exactly, Jack agreed. Hey, you ever do group lessons? Or something for a hyper 13-year-old who thinks he's the next big thing? I shrugged. I can handle 13-year-olds. Bring him by. We'll see if music or noise is his thing. Jack chuckled, and that sound did funny things to my stomach. Deal. I'll bring him next time. Thanks, Sarah. As they left, I shook my head, dismissing the fluttery feeling. Jack was just a dad, a widower, trying to raise his kids right. Nothing more. But life, as I found out, loves throwing curveballs. Jack started showing up more, sometimes with Alex, sometimes alone under the pretext of discussing Emma's progress. We'd chat, and those chats started veering off music more often than not. One day, as autumn painted the world in hues of gold and crimson, Jack turned to me, a half-smile on his face. Sarah, would you consider going out with me? Like, a date? I blinked, surprised. A date? Yeah, he said, his voice firmer than his casual stance suggested. I like talking to you. The kids like you. And I want to see where this could go. It was unexpected, this shift from casual chats to the possibility of something more. But looking into Jack's earnest eyes, I felt a pull, an interest I hadn't felt in a long time. Okay, Jack. Let's see where this goes. I found myself saying, a smile breaking through my usual reserve. Merging into Jack's world was like stepping onto a stage without a rehearsal. Emma was easy, music was our language. Alex, though, was a different beat, skeptical of the new woman in his dad's life, protective of his sister and the memory of his mom. And then there was Mary, Jack's mom, a matriarch with warmth and sharpness all rolled into one. The day Jack introduced me to Alex, the kid sized me up like I was a new recruit. So, you're the music teacher, Alex said, crossing his arms, his eyes narrowed. It wasn't unfriendly, but it wasn't open arms either. That's me. And you must be the next big thing in music, from what I've heard. I shot back, trying to break the ice with a smile. He cracked a grin, the skepticism in his eyes softening a bit. Maybe. Guess we'll see if you're any good. Challenge accepted, I said, and from there, things started to ease into a rhythm. Alex had energy for days and a curious mind. He didn't take to music like Emma, but he respected the passion behind it. Meeting Mary was another story. She had a reputation for being tough as nails, with a heart of gold hidden somewhere beneath. Walking into her house for the first time, I was greeted with a scrutinizing gaze that could make a seasoned performer sweat. You're Sarah. Heard a lot about you, she started, her voice firm but not unkind. Good things, I hope, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She chuckled, a sound that carried both warmth and a hint of challenge. Depends on who you ask. Sit down. Let's see if you pass the test. The afternoon unfolded with conversations that swung from blunt to deeply personal. Mary didn't hold back, asking about my intentions with her son, my thoughts on family, and my ambitions. It was like a verbal sparring match, but beneath her tough exterior, I saw glimpses of the love she had for her family. Jack's been through a lot. The kids, too. They need stability, not just another person passing through, Mary said, locking eyes with me. I'm not here for a temporary gig, Mary. I care about them. About Jack. I'm in this, I responded, my voice carrying a conviction I felt deep in my bones. She studied me for a moment longer, then nodded, as if I'd passed some unspoken test. Good. They could use someone like you. Just remember, kids and Jack come first. Always. Always, I echoed, understanding the weight of her words. As months turned into a year, my bond with Jack's family deepened. Emma and Alex, each in their own way, started to let me in. We had our moments, disagreements, misunderstandings, the usual family dynamics, but underneath it all was a growing sense of belonging. Jack's proposal came on a quiet evening, after a day filled with laughter and music. It was simple, no grand gestures, just him and me, and a question that promised a new chapter. Sarah, I've seen you with the kids, with my mom, with me. You've become a part of us, a part we didn't even know was missing. Marry me? Let's make this official. I looked at him, at the man who had become my unexpected harmony, and without a moment's hesitation, I said, yes. The wedding was small, an intimate affair with those who mattered most. Mary, despite her tough exterior, shed a few tears, whispering, "Take care of them, Sarah. Your family now." And as I looked around at my new family, Jack, Emma, Alex, and Mary, I realized I wasn't just stepping into their lives, we were creating a new melody together. One that had its dissonances, but was ours, uniquely beautiful in its complexity. Life with Jack and the kids had settled into a sort of comfortable routine, filled with school runs, music lessons, and family dinners. But as life tends to do, it threw us a curveball that changed everything. Mary's health took a nosedive, leaving her paralyzed and in need of constant care. Jack decided the best thing was to move her into our home. It made sense, but I don't think any of us were truly prepared for the impact it would have. From the get-go, the weight of caring for Mary fell heavily on my shoulders. Jack was caught up with work, and the kids, well, they were still kids. I didn't mind at first, Mary was family, after all. But as time went on, the strain began to show. One particularly tough day, after a grueling session of trying to get Mary comfortable and dealing with a mountain of household chores, I sat down at the kitchen table, feeling utterly defeated. Mary had been particularly difficult, refusing to eat or take her medication, and Jack had been no help, locked away in his office. I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't hear Jack come in. He stood there, watching me, an unreadable expression on his face. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his voice void of the warmth it once held. I braced myself, knowing this conversation wouldn't be good. "What's up?" "It's about my mom. And you. You seem off lately. Not handling things as well as you used to." I stared at him, incredulous. "Off? Jack, I'm doing everything I can. I'm tired. I'm stressed. I'm trying to be there for your mom, for the kids, for you. And it's never enough." He took a step back, as if my words were physical blows. "I know you're trying, but it's not just about effort, Sarah. It's about results. And right now, we're not seeing them." His words were like a slap in the face. Results. As if I was just another employee failing to meet my targets, not his wife, struggling to keep our family together. Years rolled by, each one more challenging than the last. Mary's condition didn't improve, and my relationship with Jack and the kids, especially as they grew into adults, became more strained. The once vibrant connection I shared with Emma and Alex, built on music and mutual respect, faded into polite indifference. Then Mary passed away. It was a difficult time for all of us, a period marked by grief and reflection. I thought, naively, that maybe this would bring us closer, that shared sorrow would mend the cracks in our family. But I was wrong. After the funeral, things took a turn for the worse. Jack's demeanor changed overnight. The man who once looked at me with love and gratitude now regarded me with disdain. "You're just not the same anymore, Sarah," Jack snapped one evening, his words laced with a bitterness that caught me off guard. "You've let yourself go. You're old, you're ugly. I'm tired of you." I stood there, shocked. His harsh words felt like a physical blow, leaving me speechless and hurt. "Jack, how can you say that? After everything?" I started, but he cut me off. "Everything? You mean taking care of my kids and my mother? That was your job, Sarah. I tolerated you because you did the chores, nothing more." His words were like a knife, twisting deeper with each syllable. And the kids, now adults, weren't any better. Emma, once my closest ally, turned cold. "You really have no one but us, and you're pushing even us away. You're just a lonely, useless woman," she said, her voice void of the warmth it once held. Alex was no kinder, seizing every opportunity to belittle me. "You should be grateful we even let you stay here," he sneered whenever he passed me in the hall. I couldn't believe these were the same people I had loved and cared for, had considered my family. The transformation was stark, their contempt for me a constant reminder of how much had changed. It wasn't just the emotional toll, my body began to betray me too. My legs, once strong and sure, now ached with a pain that made every step a chore. The doctor's words were clinical, detached, but they hit hard. "It's chronic," he said, scribbling something on his pad. "You'll need to manage it, adjust your activities." Adjust my activities. As if my life wasn't already a series of adjustments, concessions to a family that saw me as nothing more than a burden. One day, as I struggled to stand after a long bout of cleaning, Jack walked in, his eyes scanning the room, always looking for something to criticize. "What's wrong with you now?" he asked, his voice dripping with impatience. I tried to steady myself, to push past the pain. "My legs," I started. "They've been really bad today," the doctor said. He cut me off with a wave of his hand, a dismissive gesture that felt like a slap. "Always something with you, isn't it? Can't even rely on you to do the basic chores around here without making a big deal out of it." Teaching at the private school, my passion and my escape, became impossible. Jack's reaction to my diagnosis was as cold as ice. "So, what? You're just going to sit around all day now? Great, another mouth to feed without any use," he sneered the day I told him about my condition, his words cutting deeper than the sharp pain in my legs. I wanted to scream, to tell him how much he was hurting me, but I knew it would only make things worse. So, I bit back the pain and the tears, trying to find some way to navigate this new reality. Living in Jack's house became a daily reminder of my dependence. I was reduced to limping around, trying to keep the house in order, cooking meals that were often met with criticism or indifference. The pain was constant, a sharp reminder of my predicament, but I pushed through, terrified of what would happen if I stopped. Jack and the kids lived as if nothing had changed, as if my struggles were just a minor inconvenience to their lives. The inheritance from Mary's passing seemed to ignite a spending spree, new gadgets, clothes, jewelry, all flaunted in front of me as if to underscore my exclusion from their lives. "You should be grateful we're keeping you around," Jack would say, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Without us, you'd be on the street. Remember that." Emma and Alex took their cues from their father, treating me more like an unwanted servant than a stepmother. "Don't forget to wash my new jeans, Sarah. Wouldn't want them ruined like you ruin everything else," Emma would toss over her shoulder, her words sharp as knives. Alex was no better. "Make sure dinner's on time tonight. We've got places to be, and we can't wait around for you to limp around the kitchen," he'd say, his disdain barely veiled. I harbored fantasies of leaving, of finding some way to reclaim my independence and dignity. But the reality was harsh. With no income, no savings, and a body that betrayed me at every turn, I was stuck. My dreams of escape seemed just that, dreams, distant and unattainable. In the midst of my lowest point, feeling trapped and useless, I stumbled upon something that sparked a flicker of hope in me. It was during one of those long, sleepless nights, scrolling aimlessly through the internet on my old, barely functioning laptop. I found a forum for vocal teachers giving online lessons. The idea struck me like a lightning bolt. The next day, with the house empty and my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear, I set up a makeshift studio in the corner of my room. I wasn't sure if anyone would be interested, but I had to try. I recorded a simple introduction video, my voice shaky but determined, and posted it online. To my astonishment, inquiries started coming in. People were interested in learning from me, despite my physical limitations. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt valued for my skills and knowledge. Jack and the kids noticed the change in me, but didn't know the cause. "What's got into you?" Jack asked one evening, his tone suspicious as he caught me humming while preparing dinner. "Just feeling a bit better today," I replied, keeping my eyes on the task at hand, hiding the fear that he would disapprove or, worse, try to stop me. He snorted, dismissing my response. "Well, don't get too happy. You've still got your duties around here." I nodded, my heart sinking, but I didn't let his words deter me. The hours I spent teaching online became my sanctuary, a place where I could be myself, share my love for music, and forget, even if just for a little while, the pain and humiliation I endured daily. I invested the little money I made from teaching into better equipment, slowly but surely building my online presence. The physical pain was still there, a constant reminder of my limitations, but when I was teaching, it receded into the background, overshadowed by the joy of connecting with my students. As the months went by, I took a moment to look at the numbers, something I had been avoiding, afraid to jinx it. But there it was, clear as day on my screen. I was making money. Real money. More than I ever made teaching at the private school. More than I ever thought possible from the confines of this oppressive house. And shockingly, more than Jack made with his so-called prestigious job. I remember sitting there, staring at the figures, a mix of disbelief and triumph washing over me. For so long, I had felt like a burden, a financial leech in Jack's eyes, but here I was, earning my own way, and not just scraping by but actually doing better than him. For a moment, I let myself bask in the success, allowing the numbers to speak for themselves. I was doing this. I was making it happen, despite everything that had been thrown my way. It was a silent victory, one I couldn't share with anyone in the house, but it was mine all the same. The betrayal that came was not just a single moment of cruelty, but a culmination of years of disregard and contempt, crystallized into one devastating dinner conversation. There we were, sitting around the table, me serving them as I always did, when Jack decided to drop his bombshell with a smirk that I had come to loathe. "I got promoted at work," he started, and for a brief, foolish moment, I thought maybe this was good news, something positive for once. But then he continued. "So, I bought a new house. A better one, fitting for my status." That's when the air around me grew cold, my hand stilled, the plate I was holding nearly slipping from my grasp. Before I could even muster a congratulations, he landed his cruel blow. "And I'll be moving there with the kids." "Not you. You're not coming." His words were like a slap, but the mocking laugh that followed was a knife to the heart. "I mean, come on, Sarah. Did you really think you'd fit in? An old limp like you? No, it's time I found someone younger, more suitable." The laughter that erupted from Emma cut even deeper. "Yeah, and guess what? This old house? Sold. Enjoy the streets, Sarah." I stood there, frozen, as he slid the divorce papers across the table. The audacity, the sheer coldness of it all, was staggering. Yet, as I looked at those papers, something within me refused to break. I didn't cry, didn't plead. I simply signed them, each stroke of my name a silent vow to myself. When morning came, I was ready. Jack and the kids watched with a mix of surprise and that familiar contempt as I hauled my bags to the door. Their parting words were meant to wound, to kick me when I was down. "Hope you like the flophouses, Sarah," Jack sneered, a cruel smile playing on his lips. But I walked out of that house with my head held high, the weight of their insults falling away with each step I took. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom, a clarity that had been missing from my life. Settling into my new rented apartment was like breathing fresh air for the first time in years. It was my space, my sanctuary, where I could dive into my online vocal teaching without looking over my shoulder. Hearing from friends, I found out Jack had moved into that fancy new house with the kids. True to form, instead of being smart with the money from the old house, they blew it on all sorts of nonsense. Typical. That's when I decided to play my hand. Over the years, I'd saved voicemails and recorded moments of their verbal lashings, a dark library of the abuse I suffered. Without a second thought, I sent them off to Jack's boss. It felt like releasing doves into a storm, but these birds carried grenades. The call I got from Jack after was music to my ears, but not the kind I usually taught. "Sarah, what have you done?" he screamed into the phone, his voice a mix of rage and panic. "They're demoting me, cutting my salary. How could you?" In the background, I could hear Emma and Alex, their voices shrill, hurling insults my way. But their words felt distant, inconsequential. "Oh, Jack," I said, a laugh bubbling up. "Looks like you're the one who might end up without a roof over your head. Meanwhile, I'm here, thinking about buying my own place. How the tables have turned." The silence that followed was sweet, filled with their disbelief and shock. Then Jack, ever the beggar now, started his plea. "Sarah, please, you have to help us. We could lose the house. The kids, think about the kids. We'll take you back, I swear. We'll do anything." Hearing them grovel, offering to take me back as if they were doing me a favor, was the cherry on top. Take me back? To be your maid again? No, thanks. I've got better things to do. Hanging up the phone, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a final closure to a chapter of my life that had brought me nothing but pain. They were desperate, flailing in the mess they'd made, and for once, I wasn't there to clean it up. Through the grapevine, friends let slip that Jack, along with Emma and Alex, had been evicted. Couldn't keep up with the mortgage, they said. Now, they were crammed into some small apartment, the kids juggling jobs to make ends meet. The twist of fate wasn't lost on me. After everything they put me through, there was a bitter taste of justice in the air. Can you believe it? I mused aloud during a call with one of my closest friends from the teaching community, Lena. Jack and the kids, scrambling to keep a roof over their heads. After all that talk about me ending up in a flophouse. Lena's laugh crackled through the phone. "Karma's a real kicker, ain't it? You, on the other hand, are living proof that what goes around comes around. You're doing amazing, Sarah." Then came the opportunity of a lifetime. A well-known music school reached out, having heard of my teaching success. They offered me a position, not just as a teacher, but as a coordinator for their online program. It was more than a job, it was recognition, a chance to influence and inspire on a scale I had never imagined. As I sat down to sign the contract, a wave of gratitude washed over me. To think, not so long ago, I was convinced my life had crumbled beyond repair. And now, here I was, signing a contract that was not just a job offer, but a symbol of my journey from darkness into light. The celebration that night was simple. Just me and a few close friends I had made along the way, including Lena, who had quickly become a pillar of support and friendship. As we raised our glasses in a toast, Lena leaned over and whispered, "You're an inspiration, Sarah. You've turned your life into a symphony of success." Her words struck a chord, and I found myself overwhelmed with emotion. "Thank you, Lena. It's been quite the journey. But you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. The hardships, the pain, it all led me here, to this moment, to a life I can be proud of." As the night wore on, filled with music and laughter, I realized that this was more than just a new chapter, it was a whole new book, a story of triumph over adversity, of finding harmony in the chaos. Walking into Sarah's kitchen felt like stepping into a warm hug. The smell of roasted chicken mingled with laughter and chatter, creating a cozy atmosphere that immediately put me at ease. I was a bit of a hermit, preferring my books and lesson plans over social gatherings, but Sarah had a way of drawing me out of my shell. "Emily, you made it!" Sarah exclaimed, her voice a beacon in the bustling room. She dashed over, enveloping me in a tight hug that squeezed the breath out of me for a second. Thought you'd bail last minute. I laughed, shaking my head. And miss your cooking? Never. Sarah was the kind of friend everyone needed. Straightforward, with a no-nonsense attitude that was as refreshing as it was intimidating at times. Her husband, Mark, was the quieter counterpart, a gentle giant with a knack for listening that balanced Sarah's fiery spirit perfectly. As guests mingled, sipping on wine and nibbling on appetizers, I noticed a man I hadn't seen before. He stood out, not just because of his sharp suit that screamed "I mean business," but there was an air about him that caught my attention. He was chatting with Mark, but his gaze wandered, eventually locking with mine. "That's Michael," Sarah whispered, sidling up to me. "Quite the catch, huh?" I raised an eyebrow. "And he's here because?" Sarah's grin was mischievous. "Let's just say, I might have played matchmaker tonight." Before I could protest, Sarah was dragging me across the room, my heart hammering in my chest. "Michael, this is Emily, the friend I've been telling you about." "Emily, meet Michael, the city's most eligible bachelor." Michael extended his hand, his grip firm but gentle. "Pleasure to meet you, Emily." His voice was smooth, with a confidence that made my knees wobble a bit. "Likewise," I managed to say, hoping my nervousness wasn't too obvious. Dinner was served, and conversations flowed as freely as the wine. Michael was easy to talk to, sharing stories of his travels and business ventures that sounded like they were from another world compared to my quiet life as a teacher. "So, Emily, Sarah tells me you're shaping young minds." "That must be rewarding," Michael said, his eyes twinkling with genuine interest. I shrugged, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. "It's more like herding cats, but yeah, it has its moments." Michael laughed, a sound that made my heart flutter. "I can only imagine. It takes a special kind of person to do what you do." The evening flew by in a blur of laughter and shared stories. As the night wound down, Michael offered to walk me to my car, a gesture I found charmingly old-fashioned. Standing beside my car, the cool night air felt electric between us. "I had a great time tonight, Emily. I was wondering if you'd like to go out sometime, just the two of us?" I hesitated, not used to this kind of attention. That sounds nice, Michael." "Great. I'll call you," he said, his smile sending a wave of warmth through me. "Yeah, I'd like that," I replied, the smile on my face feeling permanent. Driving home, I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was the start of something new. Little did I know, that dinner at Sarah's wasn't just a simple gathering. Waking up to the chirping birds outside our bedroom window, I stretched, still marveling at the reality of my new life. Married to Michael, living in a house that seemed straight out of a magazine, it was a far cry from my cozy, somewhat cluttered apartment back in the city. The smell of coffee wafted up, pulling me out of bed and downstairs, where Michael was already up, looking every bit the successful businessman, even in his casual morning attire. "Morning, beautiful," he greeted, his smile bright. "Coffee?" "Yeah, thanks," I mumbled, still rubbing the sleep from my eyes. Taking the mug, I sipped the strong brew, letting it chase away the remnants of sleep. "So, what's on the agenda today?" Michael asked, his tone casual as he glanced over his phone. I shrugged. Thought I'd unpack some more boxes, maybe explore the neighborhood a bit. Michael nodded, his attention half on me, half on the emails he was scrolling through. "Sounds good. I've got meetings back to back today, won't be home till late." This had become the norm since we moved in. His presence, once constant and comforting during our courtship, had become more like a guest appearance in our home. I brushed off the nagging feeling of loneliness, chalking it up to the adjustment period of marriage. That evening, when Michael finally came home, I decided to broach the subject. "Hey, can we talk?" I asked as he loosened his tie, looking exhausted. He raised an eyebrow, sitting down on the sofa. "Sure, what's up?" "It's just, I feel like we're ships passing in the night lately. I miss us," I admitted, feeling a lump in my throat. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. You know how it is. The business, it's demanding. I'm doing this for us. I know, I do. But maybe we could set aside some time, just for us? A date night or something? I suggested, hopeful. He looked at me for a long moment before nodding. You're right. I'm sorry, Let's do that. How about Friday night? Dinner at that Italian place you love? A smile broke through my worries. I'd like that. As we settled into a comfortable silence, me curled up with a book and Michael with his laptop, I couldn't help but feel that this was just a hurdle we'd overcome together. After our quiet moment of reconciliation, the days started to blend into one another. Michael tried to make time for us, scheduling those promised date nights, but his phone was always buzzing, pulling him back into the world of work. I found solace in setting up our home, making it ours, filling it with warmth and love, hoping it would bridge the gap that his absence created. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, a rare moment when his phone was silent, I decided it was the right time to bring up the topic that had been weighing on my heart. Michael, have you thought about us having kids? I ventured, my voice shaky with nerves. He looked at me, surprise flickering across his face, before it settled into a contemplative frown. Kids? You know how chaotic things are right now. I barely see you as it is. Bringing a kid into this, we're just not ready. I felt a sting at his words, a mix of disappointment and frustration. But we won't ever be ready. There's never a perfect time. I thought. We talked about this before. Michael let out a heavy sigh, running his hands through his hair. I know we did. But things are different now. The business is at a critical point, and we're just not in the right place for this, His words felt like a punch to the gut, leaving me winded. It wasn't the response I hoped for, and it hurt more than I expected. So, what? We just keep waiting? Until when? Until it's too late? Come on, don't be like that. It's not about putting it off indefinitely. Just, not right now, okay? Let's get through this patch, and we'll revisit. I promise, he said, his tone gentle, but firm. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The conversation had not gone as I hoped, leaving a heavy silence between us. As the night drew in, the gap between us felt wider than ever. 2 years flew by, and the change in Michael was like night turning into day, only in reverse. He was always at the office, buried in work, leaving me alone in our big, silent house. I found myself diving into my teaching, taking on extra classes, even snagged a part-time job to fill the echoing quiet of my days and nights. Michael? When he did show up, it was like living with a storm cloud. Parked in front of the TV, a beer in hand, he'd throw out comments about how I looked, how the dinner tasted like cardboard, or how the house wasn't up to his standards. It was nonsense, all of it. I kept our home spotless, cooked meals that would make a chef nod in approval, and as for my looks, I hadn't let myself go. But the way Michael went on, you'd think I'd given up on everything. Deep down, I knew this wasn't about me, or how clean the house was. My gut told me there was someone else, that his late nights were more about who he was with than what he was doing. I've seen enough shifty glances in my time, taught enough kids to know when someone's hiding something. One evening, I couldn't take the charade any longer. Michael staggered in late, more booze on his breath than words in his hello. I was waiting for him, my mind made up. We need to talk, I said, cutting right to the chase as he flopped down on the couch. About? He didn't even look up, just flicked through the channels on the TV. Us. This. I gestured between us, the vast distance, despite the few feet. I can't do this anymore, Michael. I'm thinking, we should get a divorce. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes narrowing. Divorce? Are you out of your mind? Do you know what that would do to my reputation? Your reputation? I couldn't believe my ears. Is that all you care about? What about us? What about how unhappy I am? Michael scoffed, taking a swig from the bottle he'd brought in with him. You're being dramatic. It's not that bad. Not that bad? I was fuming now. Michael, you're never here. And when you are, all you do is complain and drink. That's not a marriage. I don't even know what that is. He stood up then, his expression hardening. We're not getting a divorce. End of discussion. I won't have people talking, saying I couldn't keep my wife happy. I stared at him, disbelief and anger swirling in my chest. So, you're happy to live a lie? For appearances? That's enough, Emily. I'm going to bed. We're not talking about this anymore. With that, he turned and left the room, leaving me standing there, my heart breaking in silence. The last couple of months had been rough. I felt like a shadow of myself, dragging through each day with a heaviness that sunk deeper than just fatigue. Food lost its taste, and my clothes hung loose on my frame. Teaching, something I'd always loved, became a chore I barely got through. Michael seemed oblivious to it all, more concerned about the dust on the TV stand than the fact I could barely muster the strength to get out of bed. It got to a point where even I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was off, and it wasn't just the blues. Dragging myself to the doctor's office felt like climbing a mountain, but I needed answers. Sitting in that sterile room, when the doctor told me I was pregnant, it was like a jolt of electricity. Happiness, fear, confusion, it all hit me at once. But through that storm of emotions, one thing stood clear: I wanted this baby, even if it meant going it alone. Telling Michael should have been a moment we shared, but given the state of things, I was dreading his reaction. My fears weren't unfounded. When I finally mustered the courage to tell him, his reaction was like a slap in the face. Pregnant? His voice was a mix of disbelief and anger. You want to bring a kid into this mess? I stood my ground, holding on to the newfound resolve that came with the thought of being a mother. Yes, I do. And I'll raise this child with or without you. Michael laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. Without me? You think you can handle this on your own? You're not exactly young, Emily. His words stung, but I was beyond caring about his opinions. I am fully capable of raising this child. It's clear you don't want any part in this, so maybe it's best if you leave. That set him off. Michael was furious, his words a venomous stream I refused to absorb. He stormed out, and the silence he left behind was a relief compared to his presence. 3 days passed without a word from him. I was alone, truly alone, with a life growing inside me and a marriage crumbling around me. I couldn't understand how we got here, how the man I married became a stranger, how our plans for a family turned into a battleground. My mind was a jumble of thoughts, worries about the future pressing down on me. That's when I stumbled upon something that turned my already upside-down world completely inside out. Late one evening, while scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the loneliness, I noticed a message request on Facebook. It was from someone I didn't know, a woman. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it, my heart sinking as I read her words. The message was brief, but clear. She claimed to be in love with Michael, telling me to let him go, because he didn't love me anymore. My initial reaction was disbelief, followed by a bitter laugh. Of course, there was someone else. The late nights, the detachment, it all made sense now. But seeing it in black and white was a slap I wasn't prepared for. Fury and hurt swirled inside me, urging me to do something, anything. So, I did what any self-respecting, scorned woman would do. I went to her profile. There, smiling back at me from the glowing screen, were pictures of Michael and her, cozy and smiling, a stark contrast to the coldness I'd been living with. I felt sick, my hands trembling as I put the phone down. It was one thing to suspect, another to have it confirmed so blatantly. I needed to confront Michael, to hear him admit it. But first, I needed support. Staring at my phone, the message from Michael's mistress still burning bright on the screen, I felt a surge of disgust and betrayal so intense it was like a physical blow. My hands shook with a mix of rage and heartache. Without thinking, I dialed Anna, my sister, needing someone to anchor me in this storm. Anna, I choked out the moment she answered, my voice a whirlwind of emotions. He's been cheating. There's someone else, and she had the nerve to message me. Anna's voice came through, sharp and clear, laced with anger on my behalf. That lowlife. Are you okay? What are you going to do? I'm done, Anna. I'm filing for a divorce. I can't do this anymore. Not only that, I'll make sure he pays for this, compensation for his cheating and alimony for the baby. I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, my resolve hardening. Before Anna could reply, a shadow fell over me. Michael had entered the room, his face a mask of fury and shock. Without a word, he snatched the phone from my hands, ending the call. Filing for divorce, huh? And you think I'm going to just roll over and accept that? He spat out, his voice laced with disdain. I don't care what you accept. You've made your bed, and now you're going to lie in it. I want nothing to do with you. I shot back, my heart pounding in my chest. Michael sneered, a cruel smile twisting his lips. I'm not marrying her, Emily. It was just an affair. And you think I'll give you a divorce? Pay you alimony? He laughed, the sound bitter and cold. I won't let you drag my name through the mud. And I sure as hell won't be paying for a kid that might not even be mine. His words were like daggers, but I stood my ground. You don't have a choice. I'll go through the courts if I have to. You think you can live this double life, juggling your wife and your mistress, without any consequences? You're wrong. Michael's anger seemed to boil over at that. You have no idea what you're getting into. I won't let you ruin me, he hissed, his face inches from mine. I'm not the one who ruined us, Michael. You did that all on your own. And now you're going to face the consequences, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. The words Michael spat out about not wanting the baby and his refusal to leave his double life behind hit me hard. I was reeling from his coldness, his outright cynicism. In that moment, my decision was made, I was leaving. But as I turned to grab my things, a sharp pain cut through my stomach, so intense it ripped a scream from my throat. Michael, call an ambulance. I gasped, doubled over in pain, clutching at my belly. He looked at me, annoyance flickering in his eyes, before being replaced by a reluctant sense of responsibility. I'll drive you, he muttered, clearly irritated by the inconvenience. It was pouring outside, the kind of relentless rain that blurred the world into a watery haze. I struggled to the car, each movement a burst of agony. Michael drove, silent and tense, as we navigated the slick country roads. Then, horror struck, a warm rush of blood, a crimson stain spreading over my clothes and onto the car seat. Michael! I cried out, terror seizing me. There's so much blood. His reaction was a mixture of anger and disgust. Get out! He barked, pulling over with a screech. You're ruining the upholstery. In disbelief and pain, I somehow managed to get out of the car, expecting I don't know what. Help, maybe? But Michael just drove off, leaving me there alone, in pain and bleeding on the side of the road. I don't know how long I was there before darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, the sterile white of a hospital room greeted me, and my sister, Anna, was there, her face etched with worry and relief. Emily, thank God, she breathed out, squeezing my hand. I found you on the road. I was so scared when our call dropped, and I came looking for you. The pain had dulled to a throb, overshadowed by a heavy sense of loss. The baby? I whispered, fearing the answer. Anna's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Em. They couldn't save the pregnancy. Grief washed over me, a tidal wave of sorrow for the life that would never be. Amidst the pain, Anna shared that Michael had been in an accident too, found not far from where she'd found me. It seemed fate had a cruel sense of irony. He's here, in the hospital. It was his fault, the crash, she said quietly. It wasn't long before a police officer entered my room. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes, introducing himself as Officer Daniels. He pulled up a chair, his demeanor gentle yet professional. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand this is a difficult time for you, but I need to ask you some questions about last night. Your sister informed us of the circumstances leading up to your situation," he started, glancing at Anna before turning his attention back to me. Taking a deep breath, I nodded, signaling him to continue. "Yes, I'll tell you whatever you need to know." Officer Daniels nodded, taking out a notepad. "Can you tell me about the argument you had with your husband?" The memories came flooding back, and I recounted the events, my voice steady despite the pain that throbbed in my heart. "We argued about our failing marriage, about his infidelity. And then, when I needed him the most, he abandoned me on the side of the road." The officer's brows furrowed as he scribbled down notes. "And he was aware of your condition? That you were pregnant?" "Yes, he knew. I told him, and he didn't care. He left me there alone," I managed, the bitterness in my voice surprising even me. Officer Daniels's expression softened. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, Mrs. Thompson. Based on your account and a preliminary investigation, we're looking into charges of neglect and endangerment against your husband. His actions led to serious consequences for you and the loss of your pregnancy." Anna squeezed my hand, her presence a silent support. The thought of Michael facing consequences for his actions was a cold comfort, but it was justice, however small. "What happens now?" I asked, the weight of everything crashing down on me all at once. "We'll proceed with the investigation, and I'll need you to provide a formal statement when you're ready. We'll do everything we can to ensure your husband is held accountable," Officer Daniels assured me, his voice firm. As he stood to leave, he paused, looking back at me. "Take care of yourself, Mrs. Thompson. We'll be in touch." After he left, the room was silent, save for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Anna was the first to break the silence. "He'll get what's coming to him, Em. You're not alone in this." The days that followed were a blur of doctors, police statements, and endless hours of trying to piece together a semblance of normalcy. Michael had been charged, and the news of his actions and subsequent arrest made headlines, tarnishing the reputation he valued above all else. After everything settled, the divorce, the court cases, and Michael's downfall, I started to rebuild my life, brick by brick. The compensation and the justice served felt like a cold comfort, but it was closure. The press had a field day with Michael's story, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. He lost his job, his status, and his ability to charm his way through life. As for me, I took it as a sign to start fresh. I found a quaint apartment not too far from the school, a place filled with light and hope, a stark contrast to the shadows of my past. Returning to teaching felt like coming home, the smiles and laughter of my students a balm to my soul. One afternoon, as I was tidying up my classroom, Marie, a fellow teacher and friend, popped her head in. "Hey, Emily, you heading out soon?" "Yeah, just finishing up here," I replied, stacking some papers. She leaned against the doorframe, her expression serious. "You know, we're all really glad you're back. The kids missed you. Hell, we all did." I smiled, touched by her words. "Thanks, Marie. It feels good to be back. Feels like I'm finally moving forward, you know?" Marie nodded, understanding. "You've been through so much, Emily. But you're one of the strongest people I know. You've got this whole new chapter ahead of you now." I chuckled, the idea of a new chapter still feeling a bit surreal. "Yeah, a new chapter. Just gotta make sure it's a good one, right?" "Exactly," she agreed with a grin. "And hey, who knows? Maybe there's a new love story in there too. When you're ready, of course." The thought had crossed my mind, the possibility of opening my heart again. But I knew if that chapter were ever to be written, I'd approach it with more caution, more wisdom. "I'll take my time with that one," I said, my voice steady. "But for now, my heart's full enough with these kids and getting my life back on track." Marie nodded, pushing off from the doorframe. "Well, just know we've got your back, Emily. Through thick and thin." As she left, her words lingered in the air, a reminder of the support system I had around me. My journey hadn't been easy, and the scars would always be a part of me. But as I looked out at the empty classroom, filled with the echoes of laughter and learning, I felt a sense of peace.